So like,
folks online, can you hear us now?
You know, car.
Yes, thank you.
Yes. So let's go ahead. Yeah.
It's funny how quickly you can hear your echo.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Oh, and
Thanks for working on that.
oh, sorry about that. Yes, get that.
Hang on. Bingo. Okay, so just a quick, what we're up to today, two welcome things, real quick recap of IRC, we'll have lunch and some brainstorming. Sorry, folks, we can't provide lunch virtually. We'll get into chairperson's discussion and development of the charter, so that's what we're up to today. Next slide, please. Just some quick housekeeping things. These are public meetings, they are recorded, that's put online. Side conversations in this physical room, other than during lunch when we're intended to have it, during the course of the meeting, it makes it hard for people online to hear, and it also makes it hard for the recording to capture, so try and limit side conversations during the meeting. And then folks online, if you could mute yourself when you're not speaking. Looks like everyone's found the restroom, they're over there. Maybe if you folks could just occasionally see if there's, like the next couple minutes, if there's anybody that looks like they're waiting, and one of us will jump up and let them in. And because the building doors do lock, so if you leave at any time and we don't notice it, you can always walk around and knock on this, and we'll let you in. All right, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so we're gonna do roll call, and just to make it fun, when I call your name, if you could answer this question, what is your favorite color? Just for fun. So Seth Barnes, oh, and if you could answer, present, either present in the room or present virtually, and we'll get to the virtual folks afterwards, and then we'll also check and see if there's other introductions to be made. Seth Barnes.
Present in the room. If I had to narrow it down, I guess I'd say blue.
Okay, cool. Stacy Cullough?
Present in the room, and I'm almost a Gen Xer, so I don't have any gods or masters or a favorite color.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Tucker.
Josh Seeds?
Present in the room. Favorite color would probably have to be deep green, similar to Douglas fir needles.
Cool. David Bugley? Present in the room, green. Carson Kendrick?
Present in the room and also green.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fun. And so
Great color.
Nice. And she's officially sitting in as a rep for Colt, since Wendy couldn't make today. William Tucker?
So present in the room, but I like plaids and earth colors.
Okay.
If I wasn't always coming here from someplace else, I would be wearing a plaid shirt of some variety.
Fun. Excellent. Amanda?
All righty. Yeah, present in person, and I love jewel tones, but I'm gonna say brown. I like that.
Stacey, that one?
Present in the room and blue also.
Okay, and then Adam Coble?
Present in the room. Favorite color is red.
Okay. And then
red.
And then we'll introduce folks in the room, and then we'll go online. So we've got David Showalter, if you want to introduce yourself briefly.
David Showalter, in the monitoring program, the news department, and blue would be my favorite.
Yeah, I'm Jacob Weiss. Favorite color? Well, it's not really color, but more of shade. I just like black.
I can tell.
Or, you know, the grayish black, charcoal. There you
Okay,
go. Charcoal.
Black is all the colors.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I'm Terry Freed. My favorite color is, imagine a sharkskin suit that's purple with yellow thread, golden thread, so when you walk in the sunshine, it kind of shimmers.
Ow.
Very
complex.
So let's
Can
go
you wear that next
online.
week when it smells?
And I think, Kim Kratz, are you here?
I am. I'm virtual.
Excellent,
Present.
thank you.
And the
And
color
favorite
depends
color?
on the day.
Okay, fair enough. And then I actually can't see, so there's two committee members, who hopefully are online. Jason Robeson?
Yes, I'm present online, and my favorite color is that perfect blend of blue and green that you see on the North Umpqua as the steelhead are running.
Oh,
very good.
Cool. And Julie Furman?
Present online, and I'm on the blue team.
Ah, fun. Cool. And then let's go ahead and I'm gonna let David, or whomever can see all the people online, call people out, and then just say half a sentence of who you are and you know, who you represent or your role here.
No particular order. We have a call-in from a 971 number.
That.
That's probably me. It's Arden. Hey, I'm just listening in. I'm the FRIA coordinator. On my way to the coast, actually, so I thought I'd just listen in.
Excellent, thank you.
Barrett Brown.
Hi there, all. Barrett Brown, just an interested observer today.
Welcome.
Eric Kranzish.
My name's Eric Kranjus. I'm a forester at Justina Land and Timber Company in Eugene.
All right, welcome, thank you.
Sean Gordon.
Yeah, good afternoon. Sean Gordon with the Institute for Natural Resources at Oregon State, providing science support for the ANPC.
Kate Thompson.
Hi, I'm Kate Thompson, ODF Compliance Monitoring Coordinator. I also work in the HCP, just lurking today.
Lisa Gaines.
Lisa Gaines, Institute for Natural Resources.
Megan Tuttle.
Megan Tuttle, Weyerhaeuser Company. Sorry, I'm not there in person today. Looking forward to the next meeting. And this one, but the next one when I'll be there in person.
Always looking ahead.
Sean Stevens.
Sean Stevens, Oregon Wild, just observing these first few AMC meetings to help the transition with Casey more fully in charge than I am.
Hoffman.
Tim Hoffman, ODF Public Affairs.
Oh, and then Ghost is a newcomer.
Okay. Andrew, I know is with is it the resources planning group? That's what they used to be called. Not sure. Please correct me if I got that wrong. Okay. Well, so let's keep rolling. Let's hit the next slide. Public comment. Is there anybody that would like to provide public comments today online? I'm going to take that as a no. Next slide, please. So I wanted to just start off with something to think about throughout this meeting and going forward. There's a lot of things that are important to do well so that the adaptive management program is a success. But there's one that is sort of the keystone, if you will, to keep it all together. And I'm curious what you folks think that might be.
I would say a collaborative spirit among all the members.
Relationships, collaborative spirit, yeah. And so that's amongst you folks interacting with ODF. And so just to keep in mind that everything, we put a fair amount into designing this so that that is cultivated, renewed, try to keep that alive and healthy. That includes having effective meetings and keeping things on track. And it also, is addressing items, issues as they arise. So just putting that out there to keep in the back of your mind as we have these discussions. Thoughts or questions about that?
Here I was, this is Casey, here I was thinking, oh, this is the statue. Sorry, felt like I was really off.
And
the law, obviously.
That's the world according to Terry, and hopefully you folks can
I like it.
Can agree to that and keep that in the forefront. Go to the next slide. So just some quick updates here. Governor's budget did recommend funding the adaptive management program. Of course, that has to go through the legislative process, and we won't know the outcome of that likely till middle to end of June, but that's moving forward. We have had conversations with INR just about the logistics and how we set them up for success in supporting the Senate Research and Science team. We're also having conversations with NOAA NIMS and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and I'll let Kate or Jennifer, if Jennifer has joined, chime in if they have anything to add to that. But it's an ongoing process of conversations about the whole HCP, and the adaptive management program is a part of that. Becca Bodner, who was the supervisor for this part, she's moved on from ODF, so just so folks understand that. And several folks have asked about the requirements of you folks as public officials, and there's some good questions there. And we're in the process of developing some good information that will be easy to consume and clear for how to, what are the requirements and ethics and reporting and whatnot to that. So stay tuned, that's coming.
That's great. That was one of the things I was going to bring up, is that thing at a future meeting like this. I don't know if the DOJ's office or somebody else would be willing to.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't know if it'll be DOJ, but we're working on it internally and making sure that we're going to be able to provide this for our other committees so that everyone is having that same.
That's so great, because I was going to ask the same thing.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and thank you for asking.
Yeah.
And then finally, we are going to put the bios of everyone on the ODF external website along with the photo, so that's coming. Questions or thoughts there? Okay. Next slide. So in a moment, we're going to get some lunch. We're close. We're almost there. So there's a deadline. We're going to try and get the nominees to the IRST for the June board meeting. But to meet that, we really need a decision next month. There's a slight chance we could squeeze it in at the end of the April meeting, but next month is going to be a lot better. It's just kind of how the timing works. Thoughts or questions? And you guys will let me know if anything pops up online. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So this is all information we talked about last time. I'm just throwing it up here as a reminder for folks. So here's how many and who needs to be on the committee of the Independent Research and Science team. Here's their role. There'll be participation grants. One thing I didn't mention last time that I want people to understand is this is a one-time nomination. So you folks, according to statute, have one chance to nominate this team, and from then on, you don't play an active role in that. So just so folks understand that. Next slide. Just a quick thing. So in a moment, we're going to break for lunch, and in general for this brainstorming, just let the ideas flow, and don't worry about, is this a really good idea or a bad idea at this stage? Because sometimes a bad idea can serve somebody else to think something really cool and creative. So just as you converse with your neighbor. Yeah, go for it.
Jason Robinson.
Great. Hey, Terry, real quick, I just wanted to note that although the statute doesn't specifically call out tribal representation, I am working with LCIS to look for some tribal representation on the IRST as well. So just wanted to note that for the committee.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah. That's helpful. And so what we're going to do is, we can go to the next slide. Before you grab lunch, there's this one last slide. And so what we're going to do is, folks online, we're going to mute ourselves and the speaker and let you folks talk amongst yourselves to help kind of brainstorm these 2 points. Point number one, and folks in the room, if you could talk with 1 or 2 folks next to yourself about these, and then we'll report out after lunch. So what are important characteristics of a good team member? What do you want to see? What makes sense to you for that team to be successful? What are the characteristics those need to have? And then the process for selecting the IRC. How do you want to bring these names forward? What info do you want on them? Do you want a half-page bio? Do you want them to write something? Do you expect the person nominating them to bring forward information? So think about those questions and the sort of the format of the information you want for your deliberation. Any questions before we break for lunch? Go ahead.
You're asking virtual participants to continue discussion on Zoom.
Exactly. Yep. Great. Help yourself to lunch over there. So that's part of this organic process. I apologize. No, that's great. That's valuable. And I don't know exactly how the recording is going to work with lots of conversations going on. But so folks online, we had some discussion while in the 30 seconds while it was muted that it appears, according to law for public meetings, even though we're doing breakout groups, it's still going to be recorded. So just for you to be aware that for your conversations, we're not going to hear you, but it will be recorded. Just keep that in mind as you converse.
May I ask a process question?
Yeah.
Can you in the room hear us?
We can right now, but we're going to turn it down so that it's not too distracting from people's conversations. And then we're going to mute ourselves so you don't hear us.
My question might be is if you have to record it and you're on Zoom, can you put us in a breakout room? That means your main room where you all will still be recorded, and we'll be separate from you, and then you can pull us back in when you're ready.
Right, I think we have to set up as a webinar to do that, which I don't think we have set up.
Technically, they would.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think Commissioner Tucker's point is good, and recording or not, since it is an open public meeting, if somebody wanted to be in the room, for example, that would be a good way to ensure that they got all the information. Right.
The other way you could do it is, I think you could just, because there's nothing that in law that says you have to record every public meeting. So you could have a note to the minutes that just also had a breakout session, and here's the general discussion, and here's a couple.
If the results of that general discussion get brought up in the actual meeting, we're covered.
They are.
Yeah,
We're
they
gonna
will be.
Report back on it, we actually have that as a to meet the laws.
Yes, thank you.
It could get really complicated. It get really hard to have a conversation for both parties if everybody's just talking over each other and the recording's not gonna be very good.
And that's Here we are, I think that's cool. Folks online, can you hear us now?
Yep, we can hear you, Terry.
Perfect. Okay, so let's, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna, sort of popcorn this in terms of people talk about characteristics of what a good team member is. If somebody's already said something, actually, let's go around, we'll go around the room, that'll be a little bit easier. If somebody's already said something, just say it's already captured, and you can pass it on to the next. And the idea here is to capture all this stuff, and then we can coalesce it and make it easier to digest and communicate. But at this stage of the game, it's just capturing your thoughts online, in what's on the screen right now. So let's start over here with you, Stacy, and Adam, your group.
Yeah, we talked about, we were kind of the four groups.
Okay.
And talked about the importance of someone who has an applied research background, who isn't maybe necessarily just focused on publishing a bunch of studies, because this group is really that core that then goes out and finds those scientific researchers. So someone who's well connected and sort of has those networks, someone who has experience administering these big grants and working with a lot of different people and contract experience, and also talking about someone or a group of folks who can just kind of work well together and function well together, kind of have some familiarity with these scale processes as, key sort of the complexity is here, not just maybe the research, because we have the ability to then go out and find, the scientist experts, for example. Add? Okay.
Yeah, quite a bit. So let's see if he got
some of that. We can do the overlap. You probably know.
So maybe just if you could see what he clicked up and see if there's anything. I'm sure there's important pieces missing.
Someone with contract and sort of administrative experience, research proposals and projects. Also, the importance of this group working collaboratively well together and having big scale policy processes. I think you can go one step further to say, I'm looking for people that don't necessarily have an agenda, that really are neutral parties.
Right, let's go to the person and.
So David and I got to know each other.
We did, we were.
So sorry, we forgot about the prompt.
Thank you for your honesty.
But I will say that this all sounds excellent.
Yeah, I would agree with what's stated there. I guess the other thing related to the applied research background is they have collaborative method on there, what makes it. But the other thing too is, that I think is important, is not only applied research, but someone that's been out there, that's been out in the field, that understands what's practical and what's not, and, but then also has a well-rounded background. They don't have to be an expert by any means. It's a well-rounded background enough to understand the relationships between, for example, everything from the geomorphology to the wildlife biology, so that kind of like the big head. I mean, you want, everybody obviously.
A broad thinker, perhaps.
A broad thinker, somebody that's able to, because you're gonna get bombarded with a lot of facts, different areas of research that you're gonna have to, somebody's gonna have to try to help pull this together and sift out and iterate and all this sort of stuff.
So, right. And part of the vision and design of this is that this IRST, Independent Research and Science Team, they're sort of the board of directors with INR staff doing the work being reviewed by the IRST. So that's, I'm not to take away from anything you said, but just to add that there will be staff support that will be able to implement a lot of this, because all these folks, they're not gonna have time to do a lot of this work, but they're gonna be overseeing the production to make sure it's meeting their needs.
I guess what I'm thinking of is like a manager of a production design line, you know, you're building something, and you're responsible for all these different aspects of the project, and they're coming from people that know more about that particular aspect than you do. But you're the one that's responsible for sifting through all that and figure out, okay, what's ultimately going to be presented here. Somebody's going to have to present this information to us, I assume. And so that person is going to need, somebody's going to have to take responsibility for what's bogus, what's not, what needs to be more work done on, what, you know, what's good, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
They can say what's bogus or what's.
Make sure that's up there. David?
Yeah.
No, yeah.
I don't have a name.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, truth teller or
I could just remember Showalter.
speaker.
I think one thing that, was pretty important to the three of us was, an ability to collaborate and work well with others. In addition to expertise. I know that's not what I said initially, but I was in sarcasm mode.
Oh, okay.
Initially, we said, a lot of people with access to
Access
time.
grind, yeah.
So they can really create a log jam.
Actually, wouldn't it be they would clear the log jam if they had those access?
Yeah. Interesting how those turns of phrase work.
Yeah.
And then, I think like, not like each individual member necessarily, but among the members, a broad range of areas of expertise.
Disciplinary.
Yeah, like a disciplinary breadth, yeah.
And Jason did come, with a chat.
Yeah. Let's jump on. Jason, go for it.
I think David's.
Yeah, so I went ahead, to make it easy, I went ahead and put kind of the first kind of personal interest in the chat, and then from a professional to add to that is really background and knowledge in statistical design, and a broad range of specialties, obviously from forestry, fisheries, ecology, ecological process. Those things are going to be important as well.
Right.
And we talked about lots of things. I do want to add, I think, to Amanda's observation about the limited agenda and as neutral as possible. And I've noticed that some people, when they're not used to the political world, get really taken aback by criticism that's not of their science. And that I don't know how we spot that good team member who doesn't really give a damn about political pressure, but it feels like it might be important because some people are like, oh yeah, if they get that. Yeah, and these are all public meetings. They're going to be public officials just like us, so they're going to get policy pressure and controversy heaped upon them, kind of no matter what.
Good point. And I think part of this is, I think I said, this acts as a guide for you to think about people and to also communicate with them. This is sort of the realm of what we're looking for, and nobody's going to be able to do all of these, right? We want everyone to be ethical. I think everyone can do that, and probably most people are going to say, sorry, that disqualifies me, but I can't imagine. But you know,
Very self-aware, unethical human.
Owning the
Venn diagram. I really appreciate Jason's comment though about the experimental design background and statistical analysis. It feels like an important thing when we're looking at the realm of people is to at least identify a couple people who are in that world.
Right, and also something to consider is that there can be things that happen outside the body of expertise on the team, and there's ways to mitigate that, either through hiring a subcontractor to provide input, or to have a subcommittee that brings in some outside folks, or bring on new folks onto the IRST. So there's ways to address that, but and I like that idea. Yeah.
I apologize. So, while going down the South Switch Center and watching the post-fire research symposium that was put on for 2.5 days, I only got about 8 or 9 hours of the 20 that they were actually live, but it was pretty impressive. One of the things that I left there saying that was, for me, the IRST also needs to be somehow connecting us to other research that's being done, because there's research being done that's really critical. Like they're redoing the Hinkle, which is a study from years ago, because it burned. They're there re-looking at some things again. And what can we learn from that post-fire and evolution? And so I think there's the connection to other science research. So I would hope that the IRST team would feel comfortable in bringing back to us a request for us to connect on or read about or invite in someone to speak about whatever that research might be that might help enlighten us. But for me, the challenge of applying this, of taking this from science research to application, and what will it look like? Does it have to be an adaptive management program for a tested area to expand this new thought? But how do you move something great forward that when I look at most of the things we do in the world, we do great things. The smartest people of the day think of this thing we're going to do, we do it, and then it takes someone smarter years later to fix the mistakes created by the last great thinker. And so I worry, and not worry, I ponder. I don't have enough time for worry anymore. Well, I'm running out of time. So I ponder, how do we bring change forward? And it's not really our job as the Board of Forestry and that's others, but it does cause me some pause about how do we test it, how do we move it? Because when I worked at Hewlett-Packard, we didn't just make changes to the production line. We ran a test. And the whole thing was the important part of Pascal in his life was, what was the question? Find the right question, ask the right question, you'll get the right answer. We ask all the wrong questions when you're looking at the problem in front of you. And so, anyway, two things, connected and application. I just really see that as the IRST. I want some smart people there to help me know both of those.
And those are a lot of great thoughts, and this is going to be somewhat of an organic evolution as you folks get up to speed on a lot of this stuff and learn and respond to process. But we are going to work through that question development, and it'll even be iterative with the IRST, what those questions are and how those get modified to be as good as possible for answering policy questions that could be answered with research.
One thing I'm not clear about is where is there a demarcation between where the science ends or the public policy begin, for example, let's say science comes up with some sort of recommendation, and we need to evaluate, for example, the socioeconomic implications of that recommendation. But yet, there may be some study required in order to develop, so how does that come into?
Right, that's a great question. So there is, there's at least two parts to answering that question. So this is, the science that happens is going to be bounded by the science question that collectively gets worked through and then implemented. And then those results come back to you and the board in some form of a lay report, a report for the layperson to munch on and make some decisions about. We're still working out a lot of those details. The economic aspect is in rule that there can be studies that feed into answering that question. So 0100 sub 7, I think it is, talks about there could be studies that you folks can ask for that can address that. Yeah, 0100 sub 7. So hopefully that addressed your question. Yeah.
And maybe, Terry, you can speak to in the existing rulemaking process, assuming that we were to get down to that point, if there was a then there would be the economic analysis that already exists. So like that would happen.
Yeah, thank you.
Maybe a parallel process, so it wouldn't necessarily fall to this group.
Right.
Could.
Right.
Right. But it would be, it already existed.
Yeah, yes, there's
714 the 714 process.
Yes, and that has been amended even through Senate Bill 1501 to consider more information. Yeah.
Sorry, I believe Kim has a question. Comment?
Yeah.
So thanks. I have a little bit of a hard time hearing everybody, so maybe this has been addressed, but I have I guess I'm looking for a little bit of information when we're talking about the independent research team and we bring up policy. I mean, we spend most of our time trying to isolate science from policy. So if there are policy overtones, my hope is it's not the IRST that's going to define the policy. The policy questions will be a research question that the IRST may address. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah, no, they're really not supposed to be, they're not supposed to be weighing in on policy, but answering a policy-oriented research question, and then their lay report has to address certain things such as causal links, effectiveness, magnitude of impact, time scale, scope of inference, scientific uncertainty. So things that are in the scope of science, but then what to do about those results is up to ultimately the board's decision and this group to weigh in on for the board to consider.
So in the report out that you have, where you're on the 5th bullet, there's the familiarity with large-scale policy processes. That's just another way of stating the last bullet.
That's a good question. I think, so let me correct me if I got this wrong, but I think familiarity, large-scale policy processes, is not a, we expect them to be making policy or weighing heavily, and correct me if I'm mischaracterizing, but like, there's this thing going on that we're a part of, that's this big thing.
Yeah, I think just, not that they would be doing policy or making policy decisions, but just someone in this IRST space who has some familiarity with the bigger context. They're not just a researcher that has never really been a part of an HCP or worked in that context. I mean, to your point a little bit, Casey, too, of just someone who can kind of understand that there's going to be some pressures, just that's the reality. But not that they would be making policy decisions.
So I will dovetail on that and say that I think it's also to that point, and so earlier, I think to the extent that there are scientists that were involved from the parties during the PFA conversation, I think those scientists have a leg up here because they have been involved not just in large-scale policy conversations, but this large-scale policy conversation, which I think will be really useful, frankly. I mean, if I'm just speaking openly, I think there were a handful of scientists that were involved, and I think that to the extent folks are available and willing, I think that's a good short list of folks to start with.
I'm sorry, I was just still unclear, because you said magnitude of impact. That's a part of the directive to the IRSP, because it seems to me magnitude of impact would imply socioeconomic.
So magnitude of impact as it relates to the scientific question.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So there is gonna be a firm
Yes.
line created.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand the boundaries of all this.
Yes, absolutely. Great question.
And I think it was helpful, I recall that, Sean Stevens at our first meeting, this is Casey for the people online. Sean Stevens was like, we saw that in Washington, SEMER, which is their version of the IRSP, ended up delving more into policy, and so we wanted to have somebody that was, correct me if I'm wrong, Seth and Stacy, something that was a little bit more isolated. So AMC is the policy, and science, and IRS is the science solely. Not that you can separate them, actually, but.
At least that's the trial.
Yeah.
Goal.
And that's, that's part of Terry leading us through this process, is to make sure we do our best to get those first few.
I think we also talked about in this group, and it's probably, I think we all agreed that this first group that we nominate, I don't think the numbers are as important. I think actually a small group of the right people that can work well together and have a good understanding and a breadth of knowledge around, fisheries, forestry. I think it'll be useful actually for those folks to not have too many cooks. I think, I don't know if I threw a number out there, I would almost say 7 might be the ideal. 9 might be a little bit too many. I don't know. I just think that number is important. We don't want to swell it too high, or else it's going to cripple it.
I completely agree with that. Yeah.
I would hesitate to start with us. This is Casey for the people online. I would hesitate to propose or that we nominate like 9 members when they might decide they want to have, they can't decide they want to have a 7-person, even though they in theory get to set up their own charter, because we've already nominated 9. Do you see what I mean? That we could, nominating and starting with a smaller number than they ultimately decide they want or equal to seems to be the best position, but how we determine that, I don't know.
So you mean, if the IRST members decide they want additional members, they can, do that, but they can't decide they need fewer.
Right.
And
I doubt that they
workable.
can remove some of their own members. Right?
I think there's.
They could, yes, that's a
There is
good
something
point.
in the statute that they can't. Yeah.
But I doubt that they could remove members that we nominated and the board approved,
They're not
right?
gonna vote someone off the island.
Yeah.
Right, I think.
Maybe they would.
I think if something is really egregious, they could vote somebody off the island. But otherwise, they're gonna stick with what they got. And they may say, we need more disciplinary experts in the room. And then it becomes a conversation they have of, do we want to keep it at X or do we want to do X plus 2? So we have options, et cetera.
And maybe I'm getting too far into other.
Let's so I think this is a good.
But your questions were still on point. I wanted you to know.
I think this is a good first start, and I'm gonna take this and try and make it a little more cohesive and pithy.
Terry, I guess one last point, as I'm thinking about the charge of this group. Like you said, they are gonna is it the actual members of the IRST who will be charged with writing layperson report?
So that's a good question. So in rule, that layperson report can either be done by the person who wins the RFP or by the IRST, and IRST is really with INR's staff support and the IRST people reviewing it. So actual drafting would be INR staff, and then there'd be a back and forth between IRST and INR.
Yeah, and that's where I think, that applied research is really important, because trying to contextualize the numbers, right, the data that we get from the research, to be able to explain it in ways that we and the board can comprehend, right, in order to make those policy decisions.
Yep.
And I guess to add onto your point, going to be very useful for this group, and thinking about the statistical analysis piece, having someone on there who can speak to thresholds of uncertainty, range of certainty, kind of interpret some of that, I think will be really helpful for this. What I always appreciate, how the science should be used, right? Because there's always going to be some level of uncertainty. There's always going to be, within the methodology, typically there's some type of assumptions that have to be worked in, because when we're working with nature, it's you can't really be working in the sandbox and try to apply that everywhere, because we don't all live in a sandbox. We live are different everywhere. So I think that'll be in that well, with truth and respect and rapport, right? Like, we want to make sure that the people are on here that, as they are interpreting that, we trust what they're saying.
Yep. Yep. Excellent. So let's move on to the next part of your report out, which is the, what's the process for selecting? And I don't mean like, how do you vote?
Before you go there, can I just, what you just said at the end, I think is really on the IRSP, and that is humans that have enough of a reputation in the scientific community where they are trusted by people from multiple sides of something. They are just individuals that have a high, they're not always publishing in the most flashy journals with the most, but they are well respected. I think that is important, because it's the credibility. I mean, if I could, I want humans in there that that have published in very credible journals, that people from multiple sides could cite their work and say, and have cited their work and said, that's just good work. And scientists from multiple perspectives would say that person's just a genuine.
I hope we're gonna pay him more than 10,000 then, Terry.
I tried to write that in.
This is Casey, sorry.
I tried to write that in scientific, to give a sense of the order of magnitude, rather than a specific number, because that specific number we don't know yet. And we don't know what our funding's like, and, so.
I really appreciated that, Terry, actually. I thought that.
And that's, so, yeah.
I just mean that, they're gonna cost us.
Well,
I hope that that's what we get, but
That person's time is valuable.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
But
So-
what were you gonna say?
I think they've got to want to be on this for other sorts of things.
Yeah.
This is not going to be
Yeah,
like
yeah.
anybody's going to get rich.
Right, right, or famous, like us. Here.
Yeah.
We're not gonna get rich on it.
What?
So let's move on to the next slide, which is the process. And so it's sort of I broke it out as a two-part, but, how do you want, the questions are, how do you want the names to come to everyone in terms of, a formal application versus kind of word of mouth? And then what information do you want to see from your fellow, AMPC members that are nominating somebody, how much info, what makes sense to you to provide there. So let's go ahead and again, go around the room. Let's start online. Jason and Julie and Kim, if you're still there, I know Kim had to leave early. Would love to hear your thoughts on this question.
Yeah, I can summarize our discussion and feel free to weigh in, Kim or Julie, on this as well. So kind of our understanding in terms of bringing names forward is that members of the committee would work together to identify reputable specialists that meet the criteria under the legislation to bring forward. And then the names would be provided as well as a CV or profile to be reviewed by the committee. And then the person or people that nominate that individual would provide some level of background or review to the committee as we look at the nominee and go through the process of review. And then Kim had a clarifying question. I just want to make sure we're correct on this, that for his purposes, he's a non-voting member of the committee. Is that correct? Okay.
Correct. As is ODF rep Adam, as is Fish and Wildlife Service rep that is not here yet. And that's set in statute, the non-voting and the voting.
Great.
Thank you.
And along those lines, this is Casey. I encouraged Adam as our non-voting ODS rep to engage in the conversation discussion, even though you're not a voting member. So I just want to, hopefully other people are good with that too. I want to make sure that we hear from services and department. I mean, you're representing the department in many ways.
Great. Jason, anything else related to process and how to do it?
I think that was the main thing. Julie, did I capture everything there?
Yeah, I think you did a good job.
Great. So let's start on this side of the room. Seth and Casey and Josh. Thing to add there?
Get to this question.
Yeah.
We can talk about what things we've done so far, though.
Right, yeah, so I think that's a good outline of the process. I would like to see what the information that individual AMC members are bringing forward to be standardized in some ways.
Yes, yes.
And I think that would probably be an ODF role to say this is what, you know, an AMC or an IRST member application package would include. So, you know, CV is pretty straightforward for a researcher, what other background information or, you know, kind of we're going to have where they say what their particular discipline or disciplines of expertise are, or something like that, as part of it. You know, as far as what I've done as an AMC member is just to reach out to some people that I thought would be good candidates, kind of typed up a form letter and probably got some of the particulars slightly wrong as far as what exactly the IRST does, and, you know, just sent out an email and then have followed up with people and gauge their interest and so on. But then, you know, once I have somebody who says, yeah, you know what, I think I can do that, I think I'm interested, then it would be good for us to just sort of have a standardized set of information that we're bringing forward, so that it's not, you know, someone goes, you know, because then it's less dependent on the AMC members' personality and thoroughness that way, and more on like who the actual prospective IRS.
Right. You've got a consistent set of information.
Yeah, to hand out to potential people who are potentially interested, and then coming back the other way that we're asking for standardized information from prospective IRST members.
Yeah. Okay.
One of the questions that I have as I've been thinking about this conversation we've had today is, are we expecting that this group puts forward a slate of, let's go with 7 for now, that we have all tried to get to consensus on, and then that whole slate would be approved in a consent agenda item by the board? Or are we expecting that we have 10 and they choose 7 from that?
Right.
What do you think is the likely scenario?
Right, so at the end of the day, the decision is yours, but I think what makes the most sense is these are the 7 we want, this goes to the board, and,
And then chairs are prepared to explain. Sorry, Terry.
There is your eventual chairpersons that are representing you could participate in presenting that to the board. And maybe it would be a consent agenda item. I think that's somewhat of an internal discussion that's above my pay grade, but his pay grade typically of, we have way too much stuff on the board agenda, or this is so crucial. Just my gut level reading is, you folks come to consensus and say, this is the number 7, 5, 9, whatever it is, and you move it forward. I don't think the board is gonna do anything contrary to that. I can't guarantee that.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking about process, and like you said, if we're supposed to come up and get to consensus at the next meeting, that's,
I
trying to
guess,
think through the process.
Sure, and we're trying to
Yeah.
iron that out right now.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a really good point. I like the idea of we've got 7 people who say, yeah, I'm in, I'll do it. And then we have a slate of 7. Maybe, we've got between us 12 or 11 or something that are, yeah, I'm in, and then we have to winnow it down in March or maybe April, to get to that slate of 7. But I do like the idea of, this is 7 people, they're in, AMC agrees on it. And the board can, decide to do it as a consent agenda, or if they want to have some discussion about it, they could discuss it, whatever. That's their end of it.
Right.
But where we would have a solid slate. So, as far as process, I think, members of this committee that have people that are interested, we would want to kind of give them that, here's what your role and responsibilities are, information, let them make a decision, and then everyone that, we've got, if each of us has one person or 1 or 2 people, we would have enough to pick through, at our March meeting, if we can get confirmation before then.
Right.
Over the next 4 weeks.
Yep.
something, you were gonna say. I guess a way to, a way to put that into how do we get there to our next meeting is, I think it'd be great if we can, and this is, I guess, part of the selecting, right? We're still on topic. If we can get everybody standardized information, or have Terry collect the information so that it's in a standardized format. That's like, here are the list of folks, here's their CV, here's a blurb about them, and here's some contact information for maybe who currently funds them. And then at the March meeting, we have the discussion, and a substantial decision even, I bet.
Yeah.
And then we as a team, appoint a chair or a co-chair to present that with the June meeting, right? Like, I can see that as a nice process for it, and I think we can get there.
Yeah, so piggyback on that. So I hear CV. Do you want, what other, let's nail down that information.
So a CV, and I've read through these things, so I'm trying to remember. I know that's all the stuff they've published, primarily that's what's in there. And then their area, does that also include, because I think what's important are a lot of those experience working on various committees and things like that.
CVs typically have, they're
has
supposed to
that
be broader
sort of
than
stuff,
a.
Right, so it also includes the resume, right?
So it includes a lot of that stuff. in there.
Yeah. I'm on this committee, I've been on this journal review, I've taught this class.
Some people have, they'll even have their own web pages where they'll even expand upon their CV.
Yeah.
So if they have a link to their web page, that might be okay.
Yeah.
Or even a bio, that they send with specifically the advanced degree that they're required to have as the minimum qualification. Short bio would be really helpful.
And I can see that Terry can even make sure that it meets this minimum qualification.
Yeah, sure.
And perhaps even since we have a requirement to have the public institution and industry and conservation, for lack of a better shorthand, it might be nice to have some of that in there.
Yeah, affiliation, you know.
I think by the time
Industry or industry
Yeah.
retired or conservation organization or, you know.
Right, and so with that bio, advanced degree, affiliation, sort of their area of expertise, I mean, one way to think of it is the bio is the summary of the CV that tells the important things, and let's get those important things down, and maybe even want to limit to whatever, 500, 750 words or something bio.
Definitely, we should probably put a word limit on it.
But I'm not imagining.
CVs can be really long, but the bio could be.
Right.
And I
One page.
I would say like.
Right. I would say I wouldn't picture this being something that, I would ask that we direct, or ask Terry or somebody at ODF to do that so that it's all standardized. So it's not like, hey, Stacy, can you get that person who's super busy to write their 1,000-word bio for us? And that way it's actually standardized, because we're pulling them in, we've got our presentation, and then that goes to the Board of Forestry, and they're gonna look at the bio more than they're gonna look at the CD anyway.
If I don't know practically how that would work. Like, I mean, I think it's more appropriate probably to ask somebody for their bio, and then if somebody's gone way over the words, you know, maybe Terry works with them to scale it back, but I don't think it's appropriate to have ODF writing somebody.
I mean, they're gonna have a CV that's gonna come, or a resume, right?
I'd rather not be in the place of writing somebody's story.
I think you want to
Yeah.
let people write their own.
Yeah.
Because then you get a sampling of their writing style as well.
And, so word count, or
Maybe just say it's a one-pager.
yeah.
Go it down to one page. If they want to make font 10 size, then we'll judge them accordingly.
We might have single to,
25, margins.
Right.
So, let's throw this out there. I mean, I think I'm totally on board with the bio. The CV, I feel like, captures a lot of that. I feel like the theme I kept hearing was collaboration, collaborative process. I'd almost be more interested, can they write like less than 500 words? Like, what's their experience in working in a collaborative process? And just
maybe
like,
adding a prompt for that.
maybe that's too much of an ask for folks, but I mean, I feel like that's what we really
100% agree.
know.
Because we don't necessarily care that they published 5,000 papers on a.
That's
I mean,
not-
that's great, that's good background, but you could be a really hard person to work with and have published.
So, but that,
Yeah, well,
for me, the challenge was, one person sent me a CV that's many pages long, where she contributed to dozens and dozens of research projects. And I have no idea what role she plays in them, but she had pages of them. The other person sent me, a bio that sort of talks about what he's done and some of the companies he's worked for and what type of questions he answered. But lo and behold, half of the people he referred to, he could not tell the name of the company or the research he did, because he's working in industry, and that's all competitive advantage of this logging company versus that mill company. And so, it was interesting to read the differences between a federal employee CV and a person writing to me about his bio. But I think the prompted questions, and I think where have you led collaboration? Where have you had a change based upon the research you've done, implemented? What was the project, and what changed? Those are the things I'm looking for, because that's what scares me, is applying the research to the problems we're trying to solve.
So maybe the question is, how was your research applied or used?
Give us one or two examples about times when your research was applied. What was the research? How was it applied? And what was the result? Because that and the collaboration comments are, I think, what I'm looking for when I think of a person on the earth.
No, I'm a little bit less worried about whether they've published papers that have led to change. And more concerned with how have they been a part of a process, a scientific process that involved multiple disciplines and worked together with that group. I mean, I think as far as the research itself, these are not the people that we are going to be counting on to do research for us.
That's correct.
These are the people we're counting on to help us hone the question down and then put out a credible, RFP for proposals to come in and then evaluate those and tell us, here's what we think. This project we think is probably the one that we feel the best, and this is why. So in that vein, I don't know that it's as important to have like somebody that's like published a ton that has led to a lot of big changes, so much that is published. They need to understand.
Listen, that's the two things I got. The two things I got were so different from each other.
Yeah.
And evaluate research. I think that's another key here. Evaluate other people's.
I look at these as being more business world. You've got your folks that you can put in the corner and do their stuff. Then you've got the person that has to evaluate opinions and work the products and distill it down, and they need to be able to work with everybody, but have just a broad common sense knowledge of how all this is good.
Maybe would, experience working collaboratively across multiple disciplines. That kind of capture, I mean, that's not fully the managerial, but that's the challenge is that, scientists aren't in a managerial role, but yet they're going to play somewhat of a board oversight type of.
You need to work at a level that's above just have to work with other folks, understand how other disciplines interface with one another. That's exactly what you're saying. That's what you want to look for. And what you want to look for, I'll say the same thing.
More than we would get out of a CV, I think, is asking that question, seeing how they respond, both the collaborative side, and I liked your point, Dave, of have they evaluated research? I'll leave that open. How do they, respond to that? What do they interpret that to mean? It'd be interesting to know.
Yeah, sure, and a very open.
It might even go so far as if you get down to a certain level, like decisions I used to be in, call them up, talk to them, ask. We could have a Zoom or whatever's appropriate meeting where we could ask these final, because this is an important position that we're formulating here, right? So we may not get all the questions answered that we want from, a pamphlet. So we have to think of it as a job interview.
Well, and that's where I think for our own internal discussion, I think getting a background like a one-page as well as a CV, would be useful. But I think in the end, the discussion amongst us, hopefully whoever reached out to that person can tell us, here's why I thought that person would be good. They've participated in X, Y, and Z. I've seen them working in these sorts of collaboratives and with people and whatever, right? And then that's the discussion that this group has. Versus, I didn't really know that person, but I've seen their research. I put their name and they're willing to do it. Well, then we can sort of, okay, maybe, but these are the core and plug and play and figure out where we land with that.
Alan, and my question on the timeline, I agree with you that, if we had the time, doing some sort of an interview would be really nice, I think, to be able to answer some more of those questions. But without that, as far as I can tell, the timeline that we have, that's why maybe having 2 or 3 prompted questions, if we're gonna give them a page, they should be able to write a paragraph for 3 different questions, prompted questions with a short bio at the beginning or something like that. At least that's how maybe I would organize my page. But
I'd be a little hesitant to bring them in for interviews because they'd ask us questions that we can't answer.
you're probably right. They answer our questions with questions.
Yeah, really.
Well, yeah, I mean, in talking to people, I'm being pretty frank about that.
Yeah.
Honestly, this is a brand new process. It has a lot of similarities with what Washington State has done. but it's a new process, and so you're gonna get all the excitement of being in on the ground floor of a new process, which means you can have a lasting influence, and on the other hand, sometimes where it's just confusing or uncertain what needs to happen, and, you know, you're gonna, for better or for worse, get a share of that responsibility of figuring out how this will work going into the future.
So to pin this down, I've
Yeah.
got experience working collaboratively, and how have you worked across disciplines? That's 2 questions. Does that feel like?
Your second question, you had a question, Seth, recently. Was it, oh, maybe it was Stacy. One of you had like an open-ended one.
Oh, it's to Dave's point about
Oh.
how have they evaluated research or something.
Because I would hesitate to close the door on not having, I mean, I can't imagine going up for a job and not talking to somebody to find out who is this person. I mean, if we're just evaluating a resume or a compendium of materials, that's great. But I've never hired anybody. And so I'm just wondering if there's a case where, let's say that this person's really cool, really great, seems like they fit the bill, and maybe there's something about the packet that they provided that isn't answering what we really, well, some of us really want to know. We should at least have the door open that person would call and just talk to them. Okay, your resume says this, or your CV says this. We'd like to know a little bit more, you know, just.
That's a possibility I hadn't envisioned, and we have to probably think through that. But we need to be consistent how we did that, so that so we're not, for public meeting purposes, we're not having decisions being made outside the meeting. I mean, it's one thing if 1 or 2 of you speak with somebody and bring their name forward, but if there's like, they're getting popcorn phone calls, and
That's not what I'm suggesting.
were you suggesting having everyone do an interview?
Not everybody, what I'm saying is that you've got a body of people that are trying to interview someone, trying to formulate who's the best person here. But let's say we get, hypothetically, let's say you get 30 people who want to do this, and you get all really cool stuff, looks on paper, looks great, but somehow need to whittle that down.
Sure.
And so, I don't know how else to do it other than, you know, and it doesn't have to be for everybody. Maybe some people say, oh, this guy isn't gonna work, you know, just throw him out. But you might be down to 2 or 3 candidates where you want to talk to them, at least get more feedback, and it wouldn't be an isolated thing, it'd be meaning it. I hate to just I just hate to short circuit a process to meet a deadline for something that's so important as this, that's never been done before. That just doesn't ring right to me.
So, Terry, one of the things you just said is, would there be, because in my mind, one way to do this would be, we come with a list, come with names next meeting, in March, and then we whittle it down to what we think are the likely 7, or just using the number 7, but.
Keep using it again and again. Yeah. We'll make that decision in another slide.
But, or maybe we already have.
I love it.
I'm just kidding. So, and then we all kind of coalesce around that. We think we're comfortable with this, but a few people don't know, you know, don't have familiarity with these 2 individuals, and so we have their information now between this meeting, the March meeting, and the April meeting. If you want to reach out and have conversation with somebody on this list that you don't know, to just get to know them a little bit better, that's on you. It's not a chain decision, because nobody's making any decisions there. It's just, and it's not a directive that everybody reaches out to everybody. It's just an open opportunity. You have contact information. If there's people here that you had opportunity to hear what other people thought about those individuals that knew them, but if you want to reach out and talk to them, then here's the information, and go ahead and make that. And then at the next meeting, we have that discussion and a little bit better informed. And I don't know. I mean, that seems like maybe it would. I like that better than bringing them into a one with like 10 people around, and you're, you know, questioning, and we all have like 3 minutes with each candidate. That just feels, if I'm the candidate, that feels really weird, for one, and like, I don't know that would for me, if it was somebody I wasn't familiar with, I'm not sure that 3 or 5 minutes with everybody here would do it anyway. I'm not sure that would
And
solve.
also, I'm sure they can commit their time, because we're talking about, this is a job that's gonna pay 10, 20, some limited amount of money. It's not their career. In fact, one has to get permission from an employer I was talking to, the other one felt like they could speak for the partners. But the answer is that both of them, if I said you have a day here, a half a day there, and a day there, I like the idea of being able to call and check on them, but I'm used to having one commissioner on the interview team. For every time we hire a high-level staff, we have one commissioner, and the other two commissioners get a chance to have a veto power after a name is brought forward. This is what we have. They're going to be available this day. Will you get this time? You get this time, and you get 15 minutes with the person to make sure there's not a concern about the person. And we've occasionally had one commissioner come out of there and say, can't do it, won't do it. And we look for, because we have a committee that's recommending. Because I would hope that the names I would bring, that more than one person would know them, and that they would have some connection to some of you in other ways.
Yeah.
That yes, a couple people might need to call and ask a question or two, but I would hope that some of you would be able to speak up and say, yes, that person I think would do well in this position.
Yeah, I agree, and I fully anticipate that several of you will bring forward names of people that I already know and have a relationship with. And in that case, I could weigh in that conversation and probably not need to make it. But if somebody did want to, I don't know.
How was the timing? Oh, sorry.
Like I said, that idea is fine with me. I just would be concerned that there's no
interaction.
Yeah,
You're concerned.
right, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
I'm super used to making decisions, like, Commissioner Tucker and I had to make a lot of decisions very quickly, so I'm more comfortable, I think, than David with, not sitting in person with somebody, but, I wanted to ask Terry, like, the timing of that,
So
does that work? Because I'm comfortable with how Seth has proposed it, but if we need to move it forward, just let us know, right?
Right. So let's plan on the March meeting, the information's brought forth. Before that meeting, let's aim for a week, that might be pushing it, but at least several days before that meeting, to have, the bio and the CV and the basics of these people that you're gonna bring forward, and then we can talk about them in the meeting. If we need to, have more time because you've got 13 names, you might be scraping to get 7 names. I don't know. I mean, a lot of these folks are like, a lot of scientists I know, I'm gonna be in the public eye and the crosshairs. Interested.
Or they have a half dozen graduate students and teaching load and grants and stuff.
Yeah.
They need to publish.
Yeah, so let's
Quick question. So we talked about whittling it down to 7. Let's say we do
Sure.
14.
Yeah.
And we can't whittle it down to 7. There might be a systematic way to get it down to 7. Just throwing it out there, but I mean, there could be a type of scoring evaluation based on certain criteria.
Yeah.
That way, it'll certainly get us to 7. You just select the top 7 with the highest scores.
Yeah.
How would we score? Are you proposing a pre-score or based on some criteria that we put forward? Or are you suggesting like a dot exercise? Everybody gets 5 dots.
No.
Put the names up there. Put your 5 dots on where you think you should.
Yeah, we could use stars, stickers, info stickers. I think my thought would be to lay out in advance 3 criteria, maybe collaborations 1. Others, traits that we've learned here, skill. And then, I mean, frame them up in a way, and then based on each of those, each of the scores, 0 to 5 or 0 to 10, tallied up, and
That could be useful. I don't know that I want that decision being made for me in that sort of cold format, you know what I mean? Like, that would be useful to inform and allow the interaction of the.
Well, I think there would need to be interaction for sure, just since it's a.
Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting point, though, that like that will, something like what you've proposed will prevent us from like log jamming or deadlocking about it, because we have a scoring metric then. But I definitely see your point about like, hey, I don't want to, if I want the scientist on there, I don't want somebody's arbitrary scoring metric to get it.
If you feel strongly about somebody,
Yeah.
then, you know, that should weigh in a little bit somehow.
I did want to note, like, I wanted to ask Carson, do you have thoughts?
Oh, no.
I do want to wrap this part of the topic up. So, and I'll ping folks online here, but so what I hear is, I'm going to get together sort of this 3-part questionnaire. I mean, 3 questions that you can give to folks as a way to flesh out their bio. They keep us on our page, answer these 3 questions, and provide, you know, your affiliation, your area of expertise, in your bio, and we'll bring it forth next time and see how many we've got and how many, because it may also, you may have some people like, oh, there's 2 fisheries folks, but this one, none of us actually know, they're just kind of willing, but this person would be great, we all kind of know, so and then let's see how much conversation, how much more information, such as the phone calls, are needed, if or not they're needed next time. Does that sound good to folks? And I want to give folks online a chance to chime in. Jason, Julie.
Sounds like a good plan to me, as long as we
Yeah.
don't close the window.
Terry, this is Jason.
Yeah, Jason.
Yeah, I'm good to go. So sounds like a good strategy.
Yep, this is Julie. I agree.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so it's 1:51 and a half. Let's meet back up at 2, take a 8.5-minute break.
Who was it you said I should talk to regarding who's going to replace Rebecca?
Nick Henneman.
You know, back to your question of based solely on outreach or advertise it somehow.
And then she was.
I think it's just going to be.
I think it's going to end up.
Fire research.
In a lot of realms where
I think she is. She talked about outreach. I don't know if she is or not. She's their title is science liaison. Yeah.
It's interesting.
Oh, yeah, it's on.
Okay, so, just a quick point. Somebody brought up the question of statute says advanced degree in natural resources. That could be a master's or a PhD. I don't think a priori has to be one or the other. So just keep that in mind. And I want to just briefly touch on actual state of where folks are with talking to nominees. We don't have to get into too much detail, but let's just spend a few minutes saying, yeah, I've got people that are jumping at this, or, oh, nothing but, no, maybe, which means often no. But just to kind of hear from folks, if you feel like, let me rephrase my question. Today, if you had to bring forth the name and advocate for them, who has people that are like, for sure all in?
Fired up, ready to go.
One that's in and one that needs to be in if her boss would allow.
Got it.
So she works for a federal agency and she is concerned that she might not be allowed.
Gotcha. Okay.
Cheryl? No.
Cheryl, yeah.
Yeah.
Forest Service, yeah.
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 Okay. Why don't we just go, we'll go around the physical room and then jump online. Stacy, let's start over on this end. Adam, Stacy.
Want to share?
I don't really, it's up to you. I mean, there's no point, there's nothing to be hidden, but it's more just like, how are we doing? Yeah, actually, names would be helpful if the person's comfortable at this stage of talking about them. This just not an extensive discussion, but like, yeah, so-and-so's in.
Yeah, had a lot of conversation with Kelly Burnett, who I know knows from the PFA process, has been involved throughout, a lot of experience working with folks of different viewpoints, and I haven't prepped her bio to share with you all.
Sure.
She's awesome. I think she'd be great. She's interested. And I've had a couple conversations with a few other folks that are a little more limited. One person who has time restriction on, she wouldn't be available until like the fall.
Mary, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how that plays out, where I think they could be great, but she wouldn't probably be able to start when this is starting, so.
Right. So, and exactly when this starts, you know, the board needs to approve them June 5th-ish, and then we need to get funding, but is INR possibly gonna be doing some work to have it? You know, there's just some questions of, is it like, they can have the first meeting already in mid-July, or is it August, or there's just some things that we need to iron out. So
yeah,
if she weren't available till November, I'd say, ooh, that's a problem. If it was September 1st, we might be able to work with that. So, okay.
Yeah, I'm talking to one person, they're not like for sure in yet, but, they would have a lot of experience on the operational side, safety, as well as just resource management. So, having somebody on the committee that, or on the team that would be able to bring that contextual.
So the person I spoke to was Mike Buffo, who works for Mason, Bruce and Gerard. He does work for the ODF. He does work for the Association of Council Forest Lands and Association of Oregon Counties. So he's been around. He's done some research, and it seems like he would be very interested in having a chance to participate. The other woman was a woman named Cheryl Friesen. She's a science liaison with U.S. Forest Service. She sounds interested. She's got a great, multi-page CV. You can't, I was shocked by how long it was. But I don't know, some of the questions you were asked about how well applied is it and how much is the work she's actually really done. I don't have a good sense of that yet, but she doesn't have permission to apply. She has to get that through the service, and so she's going to get back. But both people I've asked, both think the work is important.
Right?
Yeah, we've had a couple names thrown out where, Wendy obviously is that we're gonna be having, gentleman Matt Betts from OSU College of Forestry, same thing, not sure exactly his interest level or how, it would work, but, that's kind of where we're at.
I sent out emails to a few people, and so I talked to a couple that were interested in then as they kind of looked at the workload or made potential conflicts of interest, and to their credit, they kind of bowed out. I do have a couple other people, more on the academic side, that have expressed some interest, depending further details. So that's Christine May, who did her original graduate research over here in Oregon, geomorphologist, and then David Montgomery, who's also quite well known.
Yeah.
So they're kind of on the maybe, depending on the structure of it. And then another person I've talked to is retired from industry, worked for Boise Cascade, Weyerhaeuser, and Cossey, and that's Bob Danahy, who a lot of people here probably know. Bob's real good person, very level-headed, and he sees both sides of it, the need to protect natural resources, the need to get fiber out of the woods. and Bob seems to have a pretty good level of interest. He's not like, yeah, definitely I'm in, but he's definitely interested, and pending further information, so. Yeah.
Terry and I've bugged Terry a lot, with people. Right now, Tiffany Garcia, who's an amphibian researcher at OSU and kind of runs a lab there, is interested. I didn't follow up with her after you followed up with her.
She never got back to me.
Okay, she's like, has a lot of things going on, including apparently women's basketball. So if you all are really interested in women's basketball, she's the one to talk to.
Cool.
So she was like, I can't do anything during March Madness.
I like that. I've got a priority.
Right? Oh, yeah, I'm not pandering here. But she would be great.
No, I know Tiffany.
Right. And like she knows one of the 3 areas really well.
Sure.
And then a fire ecologist, Chris Adlam.
I talked with him and he said he can't.
Yeah, I was gonna say he probably can't. And then Ashley Cobble and you communicated. I realized I don't know if you are astonishingly close in your names, but she works for Nkazi.
Yeah.
She presented at the post-fire symposium.
Yeah, she's sharp.
And what did she express to you? She seemed eager.
She needed to talk with her organization about the whole picture.
Yeah.
So, and then want to say anything about?
Yeah, well, so that's my wife.
That's so funny. I was like, is it possible that Ashley and Adam and
Yeah, our worlds collide or overlap at times. So
awesome.
If she was nominated, I'd probably to dust off the conflict of interest form. So I do have one with our HR department, and create an addendum to that to just how I would mitigate that. But if we can cross that bridge once we get there, if she's nominated and anyone, we'll talk to Terry or even Nick.
That is really funny, and don't let that deter you, members. And then David Diaz, who does like forest carbon accounting for EcoTrust, and does a lot of like forest management plans for individual landowners. He's based out of Seattle. He's just finishing up his PhD, and he's expressed interest. He didn't want to be like the first of 3, but he's okay with being the first of 7. See what I did?
7 sounds like a number that's being pushed by one side of the room.
And then I have a list of other folks, but I think those are the ones that are perhaps most interesting right now.
Okay. Similar to Stacy, we had a scientist that many of you know, Jeff White, who was very engaged in the CFA negotiations, and I reached out to Jeff. He's willing to do it. Jeff, I think, would be fantastic. He's got a really good demeanor, works well with people. He's very cross-disciplinary. He's done research and applied forestry. He worked for Weyerhaeuser, Plum Creek, and he's currently just an independent contractor. So I think he's good. So he's a name we're going to report. And the other one that we've talked to is Jessica Homiak. I don't know if you guys know Jessica. She's a scientist. She's got a PhD, working for Weyerhaeuser right now. She's
Right. And Julie?
Yeah, I reached out to a few people and 3 have said that they would be interested. They're interested in hearing more of exactly what the role would be, but they all expressed some interest. One is Becky Flitcroft, who she served on the science team for the Washington project, so she has an idea of what we're all about and also some background in what worked and what didn't in that process. She's also managing the, oh, now I can't remember the name of that sampling. AREMP that the Forest Service uses. So she's familiar with a distributed, disjointed, sampling a distributed, disjointed area and how to handle that statistically. And just has worked with a lot of groups and has pretty deep knowledge on fisheries ecology. Another one is Lisa Madsen, who's a professor in statistics at OSU and has as a specialty background in sampling design. And another is Ivana Arismisti, who is a fish ecologist also at OSU with particular background in relationships between forest management and fish ecology.
Great. Thank you. And Jason?
Yeah, so I'm working with Patrick Flanagan to reach out to our LCIS member tribes to see if there are any specific names that the tribes, the 9 tribes want to bring forward. So I'll be providing that information back to the team.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so that was really helpful. There's a lot of names, a lot of people who, I'm familiar probably with half the names, and most of that half I'm like, oh yeah, they'd be probably pretty good. So that's a good problem to have, and it's likely that next month there's going to be more than
7?
Very good, very good. Is that Julius?
Yeah.
Should we make her the chair?
I will think more deeply about how implementing that question that was brought forth of how to winnow this down to the number that you want to put forth. Okay, so that wraps up. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, just one more quick question. Just thinking about process for next time, if we have a big group or Wendy, a big group, should we kind of ask for in the materials, like some kind of indication how committed this person is? I mean, I'm just thinking like we have 6 people that all have great experience. Like, how do we know? Like, this person's really committed to doing this. This person would do it if, you know what I mean? Like some way, I don't know how you would do that, but some way of knowing, like.
Thoughts? I mean, it could be a fourth question of how excited are you, or how gung ho. You know, that's a.
I would hope that people are being honest with those that are courting them and talking to them.
Yeah.
But having said that, people's lives change. Their employers, their management team changes. Their project priorities all of a sudden change. I've had people on committees, absolute perfect person, and their spouse gets relocated. I've had people that one bad move and one above the fold newspaper article, and they don't ever want to be in a leadership role ever again.
But answering a question now would have no.
I know, that's the problem, right, that's what I'm concerned about asking the question.
Yeah.
Is because a well-intended answer, I tend to want to just move forward, because how committed they are, I mean, I would hope that we've made it clear that they're getting a stipend because we believe you're doing work. We're asking you to do this because we believe the work is important. We're asking that you commit your time to do a critical job of responding to this. And I don't know what more beyond that, because I can say, I'm a politician, I can say lots of things. I can say, I'm committed full time, I'll give 40 hours a week to this, after I subtract out the 39 hours of playing golf.
Well, I think it would be really helpful. It sounds like, Terry, you're gonna do some follow-up in terms of like fleshing out our questions, and maybe if there's also just like a quick, you had it in the bullets that you shared with us, that just sort of lays out the expectations, and I think just clear up front that, you know, that there's a certain amount of hours per month, and there's a stipend and expectation of the work. Hopefully someone wouldn't say yes and not be able to do that.
No, and on top of that, I mean, what I've been saying to individuals is, yeah, yeah, there's this expectation of however many hours it was per month, but you have to recognize that that's gonna,
Ebb and flow.
it's gonna ebb and flow, right? There's gonna be
Yeah.
gluts of time where you might have 20 hours or more in a month while you're trying to wrap up a project or do something, right? And then some months where it may not be as, I think, honest about
Yeah.
that as well.
Yeah,
right?
Yep. Jason, go ahead.
Great, thanks, Terry. So I'm just curious, now that we've had a bit of a listening session and discussion around what we're looking for and process, if we're going to kind of develop maybe a one-pager that can be used as a platform for recruiting for these positions as well, something that we can pass out or pass along to interested individuals.
Yeah. So I'm gonna take the 5 bullet points or whatever that I emailed out a few days ago and add a little more, not necessarily, give a little more detail about what that all means in terms of role and expectations and whatnot. So yes, I'll flesh that out a little bit more so that it's easy for folks to pass along. And then also, at the end of the day, that's not going to answer every question. So please give them my number, and that way I can converse with them and answer additional questions as they have them.
Yeah. As you're doing that, Terry, one question that I've gotten consistently, which it makes sense, is for a better understanding of the time commitment that would be expected of them. And maybe that was already there and I've overlooked it, but if you could include that as you write it up.
Yeah, I did give a summary of it in that email, and I'll make sure that that's clear. And that is, I'm aware that that's a huge question for many of these people are already super busy, and which is, you know, a good thing in ways. And
Yeah, there's that saying, if you want something done, assign it to a busy person.
And that could be a tricky
up
one.
to a point.
Up
that
to a
works.
point, exactly, up to a point.
I did want to, so this is just like calling on you all, is I follow a lot of the research that comes out of the School of, the School of Biological and Ecological Engineering at OSU. Like, they've got a lot of cool scientists doing fun research that seems to be fairly related to the 3 main areas of scientific question that we have before us that were put together by the BFA. And I don't know anybody in that college. So if somebody else does, maybe that would be worth a little bit of outreach. Because they're doing work on like how does water move through roads in like logging systems? How does water affect fish passage once it's gone through? Yeah. So just want to put that out there to the group.
All right, so I think we're done with the IRST discussion for today. So let's move on to the next part. And so everybody take a breath, transitioning here, something different. So I'm going to go over the outline super fast, but before we do that, and then we'll dive into more discussion and brainstorming on flushing out aspects of that. But 2 things. One, the charter is meant to be a high-level agreement and guide for you folks. So it's not, you want to hit that Goldilocks of enough detail that, hey, this is all what we're agreeing to, and also recognizing you can't prescribe every single gnat eyelash. It just ain't going to happen. So we're aiming for that sweet spot that we'll get to collectively. And then today's brainstorm, we're going to collect notes, and then I'll take it back and draft up my understanding. It'll go out to you folks for review, and next time we'll discuss it. We'll see what else needs to be added, changed, etc. So again, this is a brainstorming process. Don't hesitate to throw stuff out, and we're gonna just roll with it. Also, don't worry about which bucket your idea goes in. Like, if you think of something, we'll put it here, and then we'll worry about where in the charter it goes we'll figure that out. So, and I don't want people debating, oh yeah, this doesn't belong here, belongs there. That'll come down the line. So again, this is what's actually verbatim in rule. It's the outline that I emailed folks, I don't know, a week ago, 10 days ago-ish. Go to the next slide. And then these bottom 3 points, F, G, and then capital A, B, C, are the rest of that, what's in rule 603-0300 sub 2. And this is really just, it ain't rocket science. These are some intuitive things about this is who we are, this is how we want to work together, this is what that looks like. And then let's go to the next slide. These are some other things that could be in the charter. They're not in rule, but they make some sense. You know, introduction and background to provide context. Voting and conduct of meetings. That makes sense to address that. What are your respective commitments in terms of showing up and participating? And then these Roman numerals 4, 5, and 6 are just things that are actually in statute. It's your call if you want to include it in here. I tend to be somebody that throws stuff in just so that it makes for a one-stop shop of info that makes for a cohesive story. That's y'all. And then there may be other things that you think of along the way. So that's the 30-second introduction. Let's jump to the next slide. Value statement. So including the need for good relationships. That's the first one. And so let's just kind of popcorn it and people jump in and as you want to weigh in on what are some elements of that.
Values that we hold as individuals for how we should operate.
Yes.
So we should have mutual respect.
Yeah. Great. Other people are looking. Is it unclear what we're up to, or you're not having great ideas right now?
I guess, my question, is this kind of like our zones of agreement, like how do we want to conduct business as
Yes.
a group, right?
Yes.
Like not speaking over each other, like those types of things.
Yes. And so the charter is sort of that writ large. This aspect is, you know, what's our value statement or statements as a group about what we value be productive in terms of disaster management program.
So the way I read this, so I just pulled open the rule.
Sure.
And it says, charter shall include a value statement on the purpose of the AMC.
Oh, thank you.
Including the need for ongoing good relationships.
Thank you. That's
So the value,
that's helpful.
it seems like the value statement is specific to the purpose of the.
You're right. And I summarized this too much and forgotten that I'd done that summary. So that's helpful. That's somebody.
I do that all the
So that's what I was trying to.
Yep, thank you.
Look at
That's
that,
great.
think about that in terms of what you're asking.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. So, value statement on the purpose of the AMPC.
That's not a value.
No, it's a weirdly written.
Yeah.
Value is mutual respect.
I mean, you guys wrote it, didn't you?
You're right. I don't know.
I'm a hack.
Who wrote that?
I'm throwing it at this area. Yeah, there's a number of us involved in this.
Right. So that's something I think the value of some other number than 7, because by that I mean the fact we actually can have fun, and that would be something I'd like to have, is make sure that we were doing important work, we're going to disagree, but let's do it respectfully and have fun, and so it's some number other than 7 would be the way I'd summarize that.
I mean, are we like at a 7.3 here, or what?
That part-time person really shows up.
For my baby, you know.
There you go.
How about collaboration, shared responsibility for mutual outcomes, things like that, where we have this, you know, to me, those are values that we all share, is that shared cooperation, coordination, mutual respect.
Great.
Well, it's kind of weird because the second bullet says ground rules for AMC member interaction, which kind of gets to what we're talking about here, which is kind of a value.
Right, so I think there could be a little bit of a distinction in that one could be a little more high level. And so ground rules could include, do you want to use Robert's Rules of Order? How do you want to relate to the media outside of this and the board? And what are your expectations for conversations have outside of here? You know, what does that interact? I mean, not that you can describe all that, but to consider the impact of these things like Robert's Rules of Orders and how you converse with. Go ahead, Amanda.
For the first one, I think it was Jason that said that, first topic, but it made me think also about the fact that we are all here, like we will all have this air of collaboration, right? But we're all here to improve outcomes in the forest, right? So as a value, right, we all value having a sustainable set of forest practices that achieve outcomes identified in habitat conservation plan or whatever. I mean, that makes, we need to
That's
that, but right?
Yeah, right. That's a great riff that we can
something along that, because it's, you know, that we share this value in our purpose of being here.
Thank you.
Right?
Yeah, that's great.
Maybe that's what we're trying to get at.
I think that was
Bingo.
spot on.
I just went back to the report to see kind of what language was there that might inform this, and I think what you were saying, I mean, we've agreed on 4 desired outcomes. I think those could probably be tweaked into high-level values. And one of them is application of best available science to decision-making. So like, that you were kind of getting at there. Yeah, so instead of wordsmithing those now.
Right.
So,
Yeah. To tweak the PFA report goals.
Yeah.
There's like section 1.3 or something like that, right?
Page 133.
Oh, okay. That's
The desired outcomes of the AMP.
gotcha. Okay.
Very timely and effective changes needed to
Right.
effective predictability.
Those are also actually in the rules of, they're in the Vision 603 rules as well. So, okay, so, I think that's a pretty good, okay, see you, Jeff. I think that's a pretty good start. Is there other things that seem especially pertinent at this stage of the game? No, this ain't done. This is a start, and you'll have a chance to, once I coalesce this, to review it and munch on it, think about it.
There's also the fourth bullet that kind of summarizes some of 133, page 6 of the PFA. It's right at the beginning, right? Goals of the PFA. The fourth one is specific to the adaptive management process. And paragraph. Certainty, durability, science, rigorous scientific.
More like goals to me than that. I understand.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking of this, you know, if you're talking about the philosophical implications of a value versus a goal versus, I want to make sure everybody's clear on it, because I'm not.
Yeah.
Hearing here.
That's a good point. So maybe a way to reframe that would be, you know, the AMC values supporting our reaching these goals or something like that. So that's a.
Amanda said was good to me. Everybody values sustainable forests. I mean, that would be like but that's a goal too, right?
Well, but everyone values, we're all here, we value working together towards this goal. To me, that's a.
I guess what I was trying to get at is even broader than that, like what brings us all here is that we want to work together for the betterment of states, right? I mean, to me, that's like, if we can't agree on that, then how do we move forward, right?
Yeah.
Like, and whether that means that science will decrease or increase regulation, we all are committed to utilizing that science for the betterment of sustainable management. Again, like, we could wordsmith it more.
Right, but to capture the big picture.
Yeah, the big picture, and through collaboration, you know, and respect, we will work to achieve.
That gets super broad. You just have, we value sustainability.
Whatever that means to you.
Yeah, blue skies, unicorns.
Chair, I'm just curious on sort of process for this. If you're gonna draft something based on what we've said and we'll respond, is the only opportunity at the next meeting?
No, really it's up to you folks. I think somewhere at the end of this, I've got like sort of a time thing, but I think the intention is next meeting, I'm definitely gonna draft what I understood and make it make sense, and then say, hey, did I capture this? And you folks will both before the meeting and at the meeting say, let's tweak this, let's do that, and then it's up to you if you feel ready to make a decision next time or want to wordsmith it some more. Yeah, go ahead. Jason?
Great. I just wanted to weigh in real quick. I've got to drop off here and I apologize to the team today. But there was one order of business I think we're going to get to later in the day, and that's, do we want to continue to have face-to-face, hybrid, or other meetings? And I know for me, we had an unexpected trip come up to DC this week, so otherwise I'd be there in person. But I prefer, as we're working through this process, to be in person or at least have it hybrid where we can. So with that, I'll just jump off here and thank you for your time today.
Thanks so much, Jason. We will tackle that question. Help me remember to make sure we tackle that question at the end of the meeting.
Carrie, so on the point of process, I think one thing that would be really helpful for me is if we are able to get whatever you provide earlier than later, and give us an opportunity to respond via email to you, so then you can come back at that next meeting with incorporated feedback from us. I think given the fact that we have, I think there's going to be a lot of time spent at the next meeting talking about the nominees. You know, however much of this stuff that I think we can do a lot of that through incorporation and providing feedback via email. However much we can do,
ahead of time,
really prepared, have a robust conversation in person.
With a rough draft.
Oh, yeah. No, I can get that out this week.
Polished.
Yeah, I can easily get that out Thursday, maybe Friday morning.
A lot of this is like wordsmithing. You kind of need to stew on it.
Of course.
It's hard to respond in real time.
Get there, but that's why I was asking about the process.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep. Okay. I think we've got a good start here, so let's move on to the next thing, which is ground rules, and you know, that can be pretty broad. That can cover a lot of topics. You know, I think you know, it's one question is Robert's Rules of Order as a how we want to do our process. That's pretty typical, but that's today, that's your decision, but something to consider. And then something for you folks to consider is how do you relate to the discussions you have in here? Like, this is a public meeting, and if the Oregonian calls up Seth or Stacy or William, what's your shared understanding of how you want to talk to the media, how you want to talk to the board? And so those are some things that are important to address and for people to have a common understanding.
That does raise a question. I think we talked about it before, maybe having a board's liaison or some way connecting this group with the board so that there's more understanding. It's not quite where you were going, Terry, but.
No, I understand. That's cool. Yeah. And I'll raise that again with, I think I did raise it with my management folks, and think that decision has not been finalized, and it's board liaison and almost like a sponsor or champion, sort of they're both in the know of what's happening, and so that when they go to the board, when topics from AMC goes to the board, there's somebody who's been observing the conversation, I think is the intent. Am I?
We discussed it, I don't know that we made a decision.
Right.
Yeah, I'll just add, I mean, I think some of that type stuff will probably fall onto the co-chairs and leadership, right? So to me, this specific portion is focused more on how we interact with each other versus, those points of contact. To me, we'll flesh that out more under how we're describing the roles and responsibilities of the chair.
Yeah, okay.
To me, that's just how I kind of interpret this part of the charter versus that.
Your question of media, I do think as a best practice, I remember this coming up at the Board of Forestry meeting. I had similar conversations, and they talked about speaking on one voice as the board. I think is important. That doesn't mean that you have to support every decision. If you were in the minority, I think you can explain the decision that was made by the committee, and here's what the committee decision was. I don't think this will happen. If it were to happen, and it's more, I don't know that it's media so much as it is others that would be coming at you and asking, legislative committee here, like that, where as a person on the AMC, I think we should try not to disparage the decision of the AMC as a member of the AMC. Rather speak as this is what the decision of the AMC was. And I think it's fair to say there was a minority report that came with that, and here's what that said. But in that way, sort of, that's a more respectful way to do it, rather than, that was a dumb decision, I was in there the whole time, and these yahoos, wouldn't listen to me, so.
Task forces I've been on, it's always been deferred to. They speak from the. I mean, there's no, you still have your own freedom of opinion, obviously, but members, but then you just kind of explain it so that you get.
Like that, this is what the decision was, and if there was some disagreement, you can, there was some disagreement on it, but ultimately this was, definitely.
I tend to want to lean towards asking the PIO from the Department of Forestry to be on the call, but I'd almost rather not field a question, because because as I remember the conversation, we were talking about this, but then that stupid individual made that motion, and the group went crazy on me, and so I'd rather, if I could, if we have a relationship with the Department of Forestry PIO, I'd almost rather have, when you talk about requests from the press, I think they really should go to the PIO. Now, the legislators, I've got one group who wants me to write up what happens here each time I come and send out notes to this group of people. And so I have, and I serve that association. So what I've asked for in exchange, I've asked for 5 minutes on the agenda. And so every time we meet, each month we meet, I'll take 5 minutes to explain what we did this last time, and I'll try to, and maybe I'll talk about decisions. But this is a tough question, because you are all high-level managers in your own fields and areas of expertise, and you are going to have someone want to know what's happening with the industry, or what's happening with that group when it comes to fish temperatures and water and I don't know. So there's going to be some tough questions out there. Sure. And I if I could, I'd put most of that to the PIO. But none of us are going to get out of it. I mean, none of us will not be interviewed by somebody or talk with somebody. And when they call you at home or they show up at work with their camera and they're on the courthouse step and want you to come outside, it's a challenge. And
Sure, thank you. And just PIO is Public Information Officer, so that's, in this instance, that would be Tim Hoffman, ODF's Public Affairs Group, just so we're sharing the same understanding.
But what if you want something that, I mean, he's not even here today, right?
He is. He's online.
Okay, but would he be here for everything so that, because usually it goes to the chairpersons. They're part of, they're part of the committee, they have a vested interest, and they're usually attending meetings, not that the might not. I'm just saying that.
Right, I appreciate that. I didn't want to make sure you were done.
I'm at a stopping point.
Well, my comment might prompt more discussion. So I tend to, having spent time on a raucous Board of Commissioners, I tend to feel go the other way, which is that a perspective that we all have constituencies. I just happened to look at the list, and we're all representing really different people. But in this room, we have agreed to focus on the 4 desired outcomes, and there was the list of the 4 desired outcomes. So in this room, we're working together, but beyond this room, I think that we all have views, and while perhaps ground rules include things like working together with respect and in good faith, or expecting good faith of the other at least. I mean, if a Board of Forestry member asks me what happened in the meeting, I'm not gonna, I mean, unless we all agree and then I sign the thing, I'm gonna share my views of the meeting in the most honest details I can, focusing on these 4 desired outcomes. So that's just my, how I roll through the world, and if that's not appropriate, let me know.
That's for you. I mean, we're talking about for the whole committee, right? I mean, because there should only be 1 or 2 people speaking for the committee, but you can speak for yourself. What I'm getting at is that somebody's asking what this committee is doing. Go through the chairs, or if you want to go through the PIO, if there should be.
Yeah, you're saying if you're speaking on behalf of the committee at large, right? Which is different than speaking on behalf of your own experience as a committee member.
Like a jury.
Yeah. And it's just to play with this nuance a little bit. One thing, if the extreme of your boss or your boss or your boss says, hey, what happened there? Mm-hmm. That's one nature of conversation that, where it seems reasonable to me that you're like, hey, this is what happened, and I didn't like this, and it's happening, but that's sort of semi-contained, but you still need to be aware, what if it's not? And then there's the other of the Oregonian. I'm taking Extrema to illustrate the ramifications of, what if the Oregonian calls you and says, hey, what happened at that meeting? I watched it, and why did so-and-so do this or do that? And so that's where it gets tricky. Or why did you agree with that? Come on, or whatever, right? And so.
But wouldn't that, I mean, in that particular example, I would be presenting my view on an explanation for why I agree with that.
Well,
on
right,
the 7
but,
members.
Maybe I didn't provide a good example, but my point is that you should all think about this and kind of have a common agreement about how you want to talk to different. What are the bounds on what you say to different groups?
What's more likely is that they're gonna call you and say, give us a statement on the decision.
Okay, thank you.
And then we're gonna say, and that's where I kind of lean towards, if it's in the, as a member of this committee, I think a best practice, it's one thing for me to go back and talk to my board of directors at OFIC, to them from my perspective, how things are going on the AMC, right? I would expect everybody in this group to do the same thing.
Right.
With your respective organization. But when there's a decision that was made and it's a public, newspaper or media of some sort inquiry, I like your idea of using the PIO, frankly. But if they come directly to you and they come to me and they say, what's OFIC's stance on this decision that just came out of the AMC and went to the Board of Forestry? I think that I, as a best practice, should say something along the lines of the decision of the AMC was X. If it wasn't, right, if it was a controversial issue, I'm guessing there's probably differing opinions, and I could say there was differing opinions. There's a minority report that will go out and kind of leave it fairly generic like that, because now, if they want to ask somebody else at OFIC that's not a sitting member of the AMC, then I think that's fine, and I would say the same thing at, AOL, Oregon Wild, or, whatever, but, I think there's a best practice there, and I think that's kind of what the Board of Forestry was talking about, and I tend to agree. Otherwise, we're gonna end up in a situation where it's hard to have mutual respect around a board where people are undermining, the relationships that we have here and the conversations we have here.
Yeah, I think, members of the AMC have a responsibility to stand up for each other, even if we don't agree. I might end up having a strong disagreement with someone here, but once the decision's been made and we've worked through it, then, whether I was on the losing side or the winning side of a vote, I think I have a responsibility to back everyone up, and you in the minority, I should be able to say, yeah, I was, but, we made a decision as a group, and that's what we're sticking to. And I have kind of a little bit different situation than some of the other people here because I'm representing a public agency. So on the press side of it, if a question comes to me, I'm supposed to involve our public information officer. So Will's idea about let's, in a general sense, let the PIO handle it works great for someone like me, because that's otherwise what's my process? I go to the DEQ PIO, who goes to the public information person for ODS, as Will suggested, and then they end up kind of, shepherding the conversation with the.
Regardless, the press is still gonna want a statement from you as the representative about the flavor of the meeting, the discussion, and all that question.
And then I think I go to kind of
To respond. You won't be in there anyway.
The old news, yeah.
And then I'll
get back to you next week. Thank you for the phone call.
And then I think I go with what Seth lined out, which is, this is the decision. There was a minority view, and we'll see what happens.
PIO has input.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
Or anyone else.
Not hearing anything. On mute.
Did you call me? I'm sorry.
Okay, no, we're just talking about, a lot of the stuff might go through public affairs, and it's tag Tim, you're it, and just if you have any particular
Well, I'd say
perspective
typically,
on that as an approach.
We get a lot of the requests directly because, you know, the committees only meet once a month or whatever. So that's typical that we get them and then we kind of farm out to the chairman or whoever, whatever the question is. Sometimes they want a response from the agency too. So that would be, you know, somebody like Terry. It kind of depends what the question is and what they're asking. But also to your point, they can come ask you anytime you want as a member of the committee. We don't control that. So that's kind of up to you how you guys want to handle that. But typically most of the requests will come to us directly because we're the easiest one to get a hold of rather than trying to find each individual committee member unless it's something out of the ordinary. And of course we can coordinate interagency too with the other agencies if they're looking for somebody else. So it's kind of depends on what's going on and who's asking the question, if that makes any sense.
What's probably more likely is, because I think a lot of the media resource stuff would go to the board of forestry. They're the ones making the ultimate, whatever our recommendation would be.
Well, like for example, for the State Forest HCP, after the board meeting, the division director, Mike Wilson, he's supposed to do an interview on that, I think tomorrow. So it's just kind of depends on who's asking the question, what information they want. And that's what we do as PIOs, is kind of hook them up with the right spokesperson, so to speak. So I don't think you need to get too bogged down in it. We kind of have pretty good processes. It's just a matter how you want to handle individual requests. And most of the boards, you know, make their own comment if that's how they want.
Okay.
So it just depends how you guys want to do it. You know, if you want everything to come through the board chairman and then go out, or if you want to be just transparent and open, that's just as fine too. I think Casey was saying different audiences want different questions. So if they want your perspective, there's nothing really wrong with that. So again, it's just a matter of how you want to shape that out. But of course, we're here to help all that. So I'd say we're the connection, and we kind of can help out too, because sometimes they don't know what they're asking. So we ask.
Okay, thanks, Tim.
We ask the media a bunch of questions too. So anyway.
Seth, you had a comment?
I'm positive.
Seth?
Okay, all right. I do think it maybe is a best practice, because I know in our respective organizations, we do at times engage ourselves, right, in different things. And I think that as regards to the topics here, maybe there should be topics being discussed. If it's I don't know. I'm just, or maybe it's the co-chairs themselves. The co-chairs should not. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out a way to where we're not going to do something that would, or whoever do something to undermine the relationships. Since
Right.
Relationships are an important part of making this work.
Mm-hmm.
Happen pretty
Yeah.
fairly easily.
That's why I raised the question. There needs to be a consistent out of the committee. There's usually or one person, whoever that is to be. We can all express our views like we've talked about on behalf of our organizations, but there's gotta be a consistent. So one organization, otherwise,
Yeah.
you're gonna get a rat's nest of.
Also, I would, I guess, that comment about the law, wasn't too snarky after all, because I realized that, so relationships are really important. I like my world roles and relationships, but ultimately, we're here because of the rule and the statute, right? And then the mediated negotiation. And so thinking about what you had just said, that, that ultimately that we need to have one voice. Well, there's the things that we're mandated to do. Like we're here because we're mandated to do, and we've got the 4 desired outcomes. We've got the reports. Those are all in statute. That's what I see the co-chairs, bringing to the Board of Forestry as recommendations. And beyond that, I think we're, adults who I think we're all adults who speak for hopefully speak for our organizations, share our opinions freely to get to a good decision. And so I'm not concerned about somebody here saying something out of turn, because I think ultimately we're still all here to drive adaptive management, and adaptive management as defined by the statutes, which will be in our charter. So I guess I'm a lot less concerned about how we speak out in the world, because the thing that's defined is how we'll really be speaking, the thing that makes the decision move forward. But I'm okay with that being a minority viewpoint.
Well, at that point, I was thinking structurally there are opportunities to suss your point, sort of speaking as one way that there's a decision, and also there's the minority report process, which I don't think is defined fully, but that's part of what we'll be doing. So that seems to me like an appropriate place, where that's sort of a mechanism that we can, if our value is sort of mutual respect for each other and for decisions and the process, like trying our best to stick to that, knowing that there's a mechanism through a minority report that if we disagree with an agreement, that is an avenue that needs to be defined, but is a process to do that. I feel like that, maybe not on the day-to-day, and stuff is going to come up, and maybe that's where co-chairs can provide support, or if there's questions, things like that. But as long as there is that process where if you have a different opinion, or if folks have a different opinion, they're able to speak to that. I feel like that covers. I don't know.
I think the key point is more even, neutral tone-wise, and maintaining respect and I would even say concern for other members of or where you fall on like looking out for people, whether you agree with them or not saying or implying negative things, but just being matter of fact. There was a decision that was made, and if there's disagreement, and how the vote fell out, sure, fine, that's fine to discuss. I mean, it's something that anyone who looks at the public record could get to, and stating one's own opinion, it's fine. I think we want to make sure that we're being matter of fact, and foremost in our minds is the group, and that we're not saying or implying negative matter of fact or policy.
I agree. I think this point of strong opinions, criticism about the committee is going to undermine relationships, and what we're going to talk about later is succession management. If there's the word on the street is that this is a dysfunctional committee, that no one can agree, there's having that succession management and that long-term effectiveness of the committee challenging, and like bad press is really going to erode away at that. Fairly neutral on our small.
Based on what the board got from the values, the word that the public or information that comes from diverse sources like this group that is a trusted source of information. And there's a lot of things that they don't know about, and so we don't want to undermine the public's trust in this program as well, right? The whole point of adaptive management is we're utilize science consistently, be able to address issues that we right, and we want people to trust that what we're forward and that we're trying to make up or down, that there's a process as well. So I definitely want to public sphere of how we communicate. well, you know, we don't want the public to say, oh, well, this group is obviously ran by the timber industry because the ENGOs are always pissed off, or it's, you know, ran by the ENGOs because the timber industry is always pissed off. You know, I mean, that's not what we want. That's not in the intent and the air of the negotiations that occurred, right? So I think in that light, talking with that neutral voice benefit us in the public.
So, sorry, I shouldn't jump in, like, others?
I do want to
I know that you need to move us on, yeah.
this topic up, but real quick.
But I just wanted to, I recognize that the two agency folks who've spoken think it's really important to speak in neutral tones, and neutral is whoever in the majority decides is neutral, right? Like I want to get us to a point, at least I remind myself all the time that how we define neutral is by majority, right? And so, but I really appreciate your comment about the trust and public trust. And at least in theory, the way that we build trust through government processes is through the transparency and through the ethics, right? Ethics, transparency, and accountability, I guess. And that doesn't have to mean that we are cordial when we disagree. We can still disagree, but if we lay things out for the public, that's in theory, that's how we build trust about decisions and make for more durable decisions.
I'm not saying that we can't be truthful. I don't think you have to lie to the media about how you feel or how you came to a decision, but pointing out that this, like Josh said, you know, this is a matter of fact. There's a minority report. You can go back to the record and review the recording of the meeting for further information.
Who sponsored the minority report versus the majority report?
Yeah.
Totally.
That's all public record.
And I think
that you have to lie and say, oh, I totally agree with the decision when you didn't, right?
Right.
I don't think you have to do that.
Right. So I guess my concern is decisions and reports are a very finite thing. That's when the AMC is speaking to the public and to the Board of Forestry through our process, right? But any other time, there's not a minority and a majority opinion.
That was the question I had about what is a substantial, and if there's an opportunity. If Sean's still on the phone and can speak to this, but
He dropped off at 3. That's what I just saw.
I think that we moved away from the full consensus.
Yeah, absolutely.
Practice in
Right.
Washington because that led to a lot of roadblocks, and that makes us more likely to want to speak to media and have a very different opinion. But I feel like if we build in that ability to, you know, vote against or to have a minority report or to have some other minority report for a substantial decision, I don't know what the process is, but just to show that, you know, that there is a difference of opinion that it in the process. That's not undermining.
Which is a great lead into the next topic, which is substantial decisions.
Bravo, you got me thinking about it.
And we'll capture this in writing, and this discussion ain't finished, but this is really helpful. And let's take a 7-minute break, come back at 3:12. So I'm challenging you to think outside
3:12.
the box.
There's one
wait.
comment. So it says, this committee can also ask the Board of Forestry for a liaison. For example, a board member, Ben Dumoulin gives updates to the Committee for Family Forestry and can bring committee issues back to the BOF.
Yeah.
Right. That's a good reminder.
We got that somewhere, the board liaison question. So let's take a quick break, recharge, and for the sprint towards 4 o'clock.
Towards defining substantial decision.
Yes! So, we're gonna get rolling here again. Next comes the substantial decisions part. And so there's two things. Statute, let me read you exactly what it says in the statute. You know, the committee's gonna strive for full consensus in committee decision-making, but notwithstanding that, committee shall make substantial decisions by a vote of at least 7 voting members. So that's where it's we're not gonna do what they did in Washington of 100% consensus, because that has problems in and of itself, but we're also not just doing a simple majority. So 7 is the number that was defined in statute.
So how many members are there of us that are voting members?
10.
There's 10 voting members.
10 voting members.
Oh.
Yep. And I inquired of DOJ, well, I asked for their guidance, and they basically gave me a whole lot of information, which boils down to, it's up to the committee to decide. And so what I did was, these are all the things I could think of that would be decisions, and I probably didn't capture everything. And so what I think makes sense today is let's just try and fill out this yes/no column about these different decisions, and along the way we'll answer questions as they come up. And knowing that your decision isn't final today necessarily, it's because this is part of the charter, and I more or less imagine taking this and putting it in the charter based on your decision, and then, so, does that sound like a plan for folks? Sure. So, what is a substantial decision? Is that a substantial decision?
It's like a tautology.
Yeah, right, right. So, that seems like a yes to me.
Yes.
Just so we're being as thorough and clear with everyone.
We are.
Yeah, so that's, oh, look at that, there we go. Now we.
That was. I guess the way to think about, that I've been thinking about it is that, non-substantial decisions are things like, should we have it be, should we make sure that is it all virtual next month, or are we having a hybrid meeting? Can we move from February 27th to February 28th for our meeting? That's what I would think of as a substantial decision, but anything that could lead to a report to the Board of Forestry seems like a substantial decision. And I know that means there's a lot of things, but.
I mean, I would disagree that the first question is yes. I would think that it would be a no, in that, on a similar train of thought, to me, a substantial decision is one that would require a motion. I feel like defining what a substantial require that, but maybe I am not thinking that correctly.
So good. My thought was it would be something we'd have to take someplace and someone could appeal it. And you know, the Board of Forestry would kick it back to us. That's a substantial. If we ask for a report and we bounce it back saying we don't like the report, that's a substantial. To me, whether this question is substantial or not is a no. This is our discussion, and we should come to some sort of group think, I would hope, but it's not necessarily a gang king.
Are we differentiating, is there different, like if you wanted to have a vote on something?
The question for me is about the Robert's Rules of Order, because I'm used to that at a meeting, we can have discussions, and those should be summarized in minutes, and we also record it and save it forever. And then, yeah, it's crazy, the things we keep. Everything I read on a piece of paper, I have to turn all my notes in at the end of a board meeting and get a copy made to give me back a copy of my originals. The originals are filed forever. So a vote. I would hope that as we talk about rules of order, we might not want to be a full Robert's Rules of Order, but that colonel, that general, as he ends up leaving rank, he did think through some things, and I love it. And I play sergeant of arms on a couple committees and groups in the community because of my role as a public official. And it does help the conversation. No, I think we can make a substantial agreement without a vote, without an actual vote. I would hope that we can reach a point in the discussion where we can summarize it and have it say, yeah, and really move toward, and again, I came from Hewlett Packard, so consensus was my life for a long time.
Maybe with every decision we decide is this substantial.
Okay, that and 7.
I'm just trying to figure out if there should be something that triggers it, right?
Yeah, that's
Like,
a great,
is it a
that's a great.
report, is it
Yeah.
something, I mean, you know,
I agree.
otherwise, we're gonna have this conversation every time.
I agree.
Is this decision substantial or not? I mean,
I tend to think that, I don't know how you describe it, but it seems to me like some, process type questions are not, substantial. And the ones that have implications on potential future rule, makings or future rule considerations are substantial. So the priority list of our priorities of what gets, or whether something, a study gets funded, which study we're going to fund. Those are substantial decisions, but I don't know whether the order of something on the agenda doesn't seem like a substantial.
With that, but I just think I'm gonna be able to anticipate maybe everything that will come up here. So
Right.
I guess I'm just interested in what's the process of one of us, 3 of us comes up with something that we think is
Yeah,
for the things we haven't thought of.
yeah. And that's
Who's the final
really,
arbiter
that's the last one is,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
what's your framework for making, or even making that, to help you with that question in the future? 'Cause we ain't gonna get it all here, but, you know, that's one option is that is, if this has implications for potential rule changes, that could be one filter of yay or nay on a substantial decision.
you could argue everything we do does, but.
Well,
To a certain degree.
right,
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
right, but does selecting a chairperson, yeah, it could, but that's different than, we're gonna fund this project versus that project. So, at the end of the day, it's your call, but,
I feel like if any individual member feels like there needs to be a call for, that they need to call the question and make a formal motion, then I think everybody should have the ability to, as members of the committee, say, I want a formal vote. That seems fair.
formal vote on,
If we have a formal vote on a topic, then it's a substantial decision. Sort of arrived there in a discussion, then it's not a substantial decision. I mean, someone, I think it might have been Casey, threw out the idea that if it's going to have implications that could lead to results or a board recommendation on the road, like that's substance, whether it requires a formal vote or not, or we just sort of all go, yeah, okay. Don't know how you encapsulate that,
Because I feel like if it's a substantial decision, that triggers us being able to have a minority report for it. So if somebody feels so strongly about something that they would like a minority report, I mean, those things should be, if somebody's kind of like willing to say, yeah, well, I still don't agree, but sounds good, you know, then is that really substantial?
well, I mean, I think it could be.
Yeah.
If it's, we're deciding on a research agenda and, you know, we have some people who are like, well, not quite what I would go for, but sure. I mean, still, like, that matters.
Yeah.
But when we wanna,
We've now defined research questions, you know, I mean,
Even with that in example, I would think that even if we are seeming to have genuine consensus, we would want that decision documented and give everybody an opportunity to actually vote, because it is substantial. So I think on some things, it'll be like, this is consequential, let's not just on the group, let's actually make a motion and vote.
so But in terms of deciding on having some decision criteria to filter whether it's a substantial decision or not. Seth, you floated the idea of if this could have downstream impact on a rule change. Are there other preferences, ideas along as conceptual filter to say yay or nay? And ultimately, yeah, there's going to be some gray area, but you can still make that decision. But if it's at least a guiding thing, there's some things that's really clear. Yeah, for sure, that has that potential. And many of them are right there. And maybe another way to do it would be to simply work through these, talk about them, and that'll help you think about, oh yeah, actually, I would like this rather than what Seth suggested. So, IRC nominees. What do you think about that? Is that a substantial decision? Anybody think no? Julie, you're online. Just forget you.
I think it is.
Does this statute inform this at all? I don't have the reference with me. 36(8), Chapter 33, Oregon law. So under the rules, it says determination of what constitutes a substantial decision per Section 36, Sub 8, Chapter 33.
It's what I read earlier. The committee shall make substantial decisions by a vote of at least so. There ain't nothing there, and that's why I double checked with DOJ, and they said, give me a whole bunch of stuff. And all right. Fair enough. Y'all get to decide that. Okay. Yeah. So initial list of research topics. So that's pretty soon. You folks are going to say, hey, you know what? Let's work through all the things that we could be thinking about, and these are the things that are the first for the next, say, decade-ish. These are the things we would like to tackle. It isn't necessarily bound by that timeline, but these are the things that are important to us. Some of it is prescribed in rule because that was part of what happened to the whole PFA process, and some of it, and that can be added to. That makes sense what that preliminary, the initial research topics is? Okay. Substantial, yes, no? Yeah.
Were some of those even defined in?
Yes, yes.
So, I mean, they.
Three of them are defined, but
substantial
you can add to it. Carson, thoughts?
Yeah, no, in my brain, like, the initial list would be more of a brainstorming, so I was thinking that it would really be substantial, but I don't feel strongly enough about it. Again, getting it substantial to, make the claim that.
Okay. I think it will, going to start off as a brainstorm, and then you folks will probably try and whittle it down somewhat. And
There are some that we have to consider.
absolutely, yes. There's three that are for sure, and then you can add to it.
One of the things that rattled my brain while over there at Oregon State for that couple of days of the seminar was years ago we saw some Trask River results. So many year paired river, real strong work about doing not to be touched, less pristine, management styles of different things. Let's compare the results. I'd love to see, it's been a couple of years since that's been done. I'd love for us to see, because to me that's the type of questions that get asked and answered. And I'd love to see that as a beginning of us to build our ability to look at an issue and see what is there in there that we think we might want to talk about. The Hinkle. Before the Trask, there was the Hinkle. And then now they did work on the Hinkle post-fire. And so area that they studied once before, they knew a lot about. Now they have 2 years, or actually it's the second year since the fire, they've gone back out and tried to measure some of the same things. There's some research being done today that part of me, as we meet, I'd love to see us, again, brainstorming charter, I'd love to see us have a topic of research presented by Oregon State or by some other organizations, that we actually see some of the current research that's being done, but not necessarily on the things we're requesting yet, but to keep us engaged in the whole research question. Is that too far?
It's interesting. I'll have to think about let us collectively, internally think about that. I think there's some value to that, but I'm trying to, how do we sift through that to bring an appropriate set of research to, one way is that this could be a case study of how they went through, and this is where, we could pull them into the process if they've done some of this kind of stuff before as well, to work with them to bring forth something that would be, here's a case study of policy group bringing forth questions to be answered by science. So maybe that might be a way to approach it. I'm just a little concerned about, well, let's call up Hinkle or Trask and say, come present. I want to have that tailored a little more to this group. And I appreciate your.
But they weren't trying to answer a question. I mean, they weren't, maybe they were, but they weren't trying to answer a policy question. They were trying to answer what are the differences, what's the impact of these things. And so that's where I think that we, in terms of our being ready to go answer those questions when we do get our research, that maybe be good for us to ground ourselves in some research that actually looked at things over time. And because the studies we're going to do, I not know how many years they're going to run. Mm-hmm. Because that's what I liked about the Hinkle and the Trask, where they were many-year-long processes, and might they not give us some, I don't know. So I apologize, but as I think about initial research and preliminary questions, part of me wants to understand some of this research is going on today or has gone on recently, and where is it related to a forest management plan, maybe some minor adaptation or some clarification or something that we should be thinking about versus requesting research, and the research question comes back, the best way to answer the question is a 10-year study, and so that's when we're going to get the answer.
That's a little further down the track.
I know.
I captured it, and
I will say, Commissioner, I think a lot of what you're hoping to see in sort of informing the questions or informing our understanding of the science will happen in the initial stage, that the IRST does their literature review. And that's prescribed in the process. They have to do
steep
literature
slopes
review.
in one.
So, if we had a question, for example, what's the impact of stream buffers on fish when we do this type of stream buffer or whatever, that literature review should pull anything relevant from the paired watershed studies, as well as any other relevant studies that are out there, and inform that question.
So maybe I should wait to see what the research questions are, and then what the review of documents may look like in previous research. And maybe you're right, maybe my desire to look at some of these longer term questions that people have done the studies, but I don't know that they've really informed and changed things. That's the part of this job that I think is so exciting to me, the chance to possibly change something or inform us on something. Mm-hmm. And maybe it will come out by doing the literature research.
I think it should. It should.
Right.
Be involved.
That I trust you. And don't call me Commissioner, call me Will. Here is fine. It's more fun to call me Commissioner.
We'll tackle that more in that thing further down the road, but we're back here on this, what is this, so the next one is a close cousin as a preliminary research questions, and these are the research questions that will come after that initial research topic. It's sort of like first one leads to the second one that you hand over to the IRST. They do a lit review and some initial scoping, and then they send that back to you folks to develop a research agenda that prioritize, and here's the budget and this kind of thing. And so then, does that sound like a substantial decision to you?
Yeah, I would say the next three are all
Yeah.
substantial decisions.
Yeah.
Because that's
I agree.
And
what
then-
questions
thank you.
get asked and what money gets spent. I mean, that's
Yeah.
substantial.
And forgive me, Terry, so I was trying to look up if there's the reference, sorry, is that the, a substantial decision per section 36(8) of chapter 33, and I was having trouble finding that. So can you bring us, maybe I missed this, bring us back in the context of why, for example, DOJ wants us to determine, or why
No.
these two folks wanted us to determine?
The statute says, and I quote, "The committee shall make substantial decisions by a vote of at least 7 voting members." And then we turn to rule, and the rule says, the charter shall include determination of what constitutes a substantial decision for blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's up to you folks. That was that's what, y'all get to decide what a substantial decision is.
That was decided because in Washington, the pure consensus was not working, and so this is a way to split the baby between.
I like your suggestion, Josh, maybe is side for this, but you kind of broke it down as does this require a vote or not? And then is there a process where a certain amount of people can request that something has a vote? I mean, maybe it's it's a little bit more fluid. Those things that are going to be substantial decisions, as long as what it would be, maybe there's a precedent for this, or 2 people want to have a vote on something. And I don't know, maybe it's just more fluid than makes sense. Or if a simple majority determines that a vote is required, that thing is it's more process oriented than it is the substance of what's being decided. Issue, because
I mean, most of the committees I'm familiar with, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm no expert on Robert's rules, but I do think that we should try to follow Robert's rules. Decision piece. But, correct me if I'm wrong, I think any individual on a committee can ask a motion out there. Once a motion is out there,
That's what I was,
it triggers a vote.
Yeah.
And I'm comfortable with that. If anybody,
Yeah, if you have a motion and a second.
right, you have to have a
So,
second.
and that's why I think
that means
things
at
like,
least 2 people think
Right.
it's something a decision needs to be made on.
yeah.
Yeah, I would, a motion is second.
One, the only thing I can think of is in contentious times, and I've worked on some committees that are contentious, we have somebody who play the game, they make the motion, and then they call the question before there's good discussion, because they believe they can get it through, as long as there's not good discussion. And so there's some modifications of the Robert Rules of Order I think we should think about as.
Isn't that the chair's, can't the chair call the question and say, we're still in discussion?
No, once the question's called for, it has to be, that stops debate. It has, if you follow the rules to the letter. And so, I'm gonna see, in fact, I've just ordered myself another copies of Robert Rules of Orders for Dummies, because that's how I feel of myself. Because it's too forward. There is, I'll bring it over, with me.
By a case.
By a case of, all right.
But I think that you're right in your comment that, if somebody feels like we need to vote on it, that, to me, that's a substantial decision.
That's a great.
And the reason why I think that is that if I'm like, hey, can we move it to Tuesday rather than Monday in 3 months from now? And everybody's like, yeah, totally, that's fine. And that goes into the minutes, and that's what the next agenda says. That's not a substantial decision, is maybe a way to define it. But if Commissioner Tucker is like, if Will is, you trained me, I mean, the world trained me.
You're commissioner cool with it.
Then, and if somebody's like, we have this big thing and we need to actually make a decision about whether they're challenging that consensus of the group, then it becomes a substantial decision.
I agree with that.
It moves from the realm of we just consensus opinion to decision. So maybe it's just if we end up voting on it, it's a decision.
It's a substantial.
That's a substantial decision.
If there's a motion For a
committee
vote,
member
and it's
determines
seconded.
that, you know, feels the motion needs to be
Yeah.
made.
And I would note that.
And it's seconded, then a substantial decision.
At least in my world too, the world of county government, that also requires, the consideration of, actual or, why am I blanking on it? Conflicts of interest, right?
Yeah.
Actual or, why am I blanking on this? Perceived, yeah. Thank you. And so I just want to note that that could complicate things too.
So that, I mean, that's a really, elegant solution. If everyone likes that, if you want to have a vote, but, if somebody, sorry, I couldn't help.
I bet that we can just reach consensus on this one.
If, you know, if there's a motion and a second and for a vote, then by definition, it's a substantial decision. And that's a super elegant approach, and
It's also a question of what the majority is for that vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then I feel like in that instance, it's still the intent of really wanting to strive for consensus,
Yeah.
right? It still forces us to want to strive for consensus, right? And then it's saying, you know, but if you can't get there, you know, and not even saying that, but if we can't get there, but, you know, we still want to try to do that on all decisions. But if somebody's really feeling like they can't get there or whatever, I mean, even those things that may not necessarily seem like a substantial decision might end up becoming one. Because it is controversial when others may not have thought it was.
so I'll work that into this, knowing that you can always, if you think about it next time and go, wow, I don't like that, there's an opportunity to visit the conversation. Hopefully you speak up before then.
Just for clarity, are we saying that these are substantial decisions, and in addition, we've created a process to, or we're saying that process is the means by which we are determining
I understood the second.
writ large? Okay.
Right, so as long as we have two members that think it's a I mean, even if the ultimate vote is gonna be even if the ultimate vote is gonna be 10 in favor, yeah, that as long as at least two of us thinks substantial, then it would be.
Yeah.
And so then that gets to, cause I mean, I kind of look at that, I think, well, all those are, and what we just discussed was other, but,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
in that case, though, I'm gonna say, when we have a research agenda, I'm gonna say we need a motion on this, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have a few other people agreeing.
Yeah.
But
So then
Joshi,
we get to a vote on it, by that process.
But by the definitions as we've outlined here, I know it's kind of silly, but, we actually could, approve a research agenda by consensus, and then that would be recorded and go out into the world, right? Without taking a vote on it.
Yeah.
And that's also.
But we might decide we want to, just to like memorialize it.
Just to memorialize it, yeah.
I just wanted to put that out there, that like,
Sure.
that's the implications of it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's 3:40, we're, you know, looking at all the things that are, to be addressed in the charter. I want to talk about sort of the process, because we ain't going to get it all done today. So we can keep plodding along and try and flesh out as much of this as possible, and I do want to do some more discussion, but, you know, one idea would be for folks, for the things that we don't get to today, I can send out an email, say, later today or tomorrow morning, saying, here's the thing, send me your thoughts, and then I take all that and work it in. Probably, you folks would probably need some time to get that to me, so there'd be sort of part A of the charter that you've talked about, and then part B would be your input via writing. But that way, you know, within a few weeks, there could be something that has a bunch of your folks' thoughts put together, and you're still responding, and then the next meeting, there's a complete there's a first draft of a complete charter that's together and ready to roll. What do you think about that as an idea to, rather than, well, let's talk about everything at the next meeting from scratch?
Thumbs up. Yeah, I'm gonna try, do it.
Okay.
I'm worth a try.
Oh.
I think that's the accurate way to describe it.
It's an attitude that gets a
I'm
lot.
glad nobody called that. That was much faster. So let's go to the next slide. So chairperson discussion, and this is valuable to talk to some about. And so role, form, and terms, you know, some things to think about. Staggered, well, do you want to have, let me take a step back. I've led a group like this in the past and wrote a paper on it and had fun with it. And I was in a similar role as a facilitator, and the way we did it then was take care, Adam.
Sorry,
Nick. Yeah,
Appreciate
get it.
everyone.
Yeah,
and that worked well in terms of, there were two co-chairs, they represented different perspectives, and we always had meetings and kind of figured out the agenda collaboratively, and they alternated who ran a given meeting. That was a model that worked decent. There's other options. You could have a single chairperson, you could have a chair and a vice, and there's a little bit of a differentiation. It's really up to you, but some things to consider are, well, I don't want the terms too short that, like if you have 6-month terms, for example, then there's a lot of ramp up energy that goes into it. If you have 5-year terms, then you're not getting as much fresh blood and perspective doing it. And then also, you want to have terms, if you have more than one chair, if you want to have staggered terms so that you always have some continuity of experience. So those are some things to think about, and those are, when I say role, form, and terms, that's how long do you want the terms to be? What's the form? Is it chairs, co-chairs? And we overall know the role, which is agenda, helping formulate the agendas, reporting to the board as needed, representing the AMP, the board, and leading the meeting. So I probably should have broken those out into individual, all mashed together for this.
Well, I mean, just because we should start with somebody. I mean, I think the rotating terms is great. So there's always somebody with some continuity level. I would appreciate co-chairs. I think a 2 and a 4 is probably, like a 2-year term and a 4-year term, just to get people started, is probably a reasonable way.
4 years going forward.
Right, and then 4 years going forward. Yeah,
thank
you.
Starts at 4 and then 4 years rolling.
And I like the idea of having the co-chairs alternate running the meetings. Although that could also just be like, if one is not able to be there that month, then the other one takes over that duty. Obviously, leaning upon Commissioner Tucker for Robert's rules knowledge. Like, I think that, you know, I don't want to limit us to be like, oh, what if I don't know how to run a meeting? Because we can lean on both of you, I guess, right? That's my 3 cents.
Thoughts on?
I agree with a lot of that. 4 years seems like a big commitment for somebody.
I know, right?
But I genuinely agree. Staggered term to start with, co-chairs, I think.
Okay. Other thoughts on that? Co-chairs, staggered terms, maybe that, addressing that question of length, that the, you folks like 4 years, do you want to start with 2 years, 3 years? I mean, not start, but have them be that long.
minimum, it seems. They got the speed and
Yeah.
experience level and all that, and then it's a choice then between 2 years or 4 years. People in the room think about chair, co-chair serving for is a long haul.
4 years might be a long time, given that people have different places in their careers that they want and professionals in this. So I think like that might.
I was just trying to look up what the, because I know that there's staggered terms for different seats.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that we're consistent with that as well. So I was just
Yeah.
trying to find that, but I can't remember.
Yeah. Casey,
That's probably about a 1 year, a 2 year term, but the first one be a 1 year and go with a shorter term. But
Yeah.
for me, I couldn't serve because I won't know whether I'll be reelected in 4 years. In fact, I don't think I'll be running in, it's
Right.
only 3 years from now.
You know, I think that's a really good point. I think that in that case, maybe the person who is the 1 year, we should just consider that, are they, do they need like ramping up, right?
You know, I'd feel more comfortable with 2 and 3. I know, I see what you're saying with your particular situation, but 1 year, I've had 1 year.
It'd be 2 years. Everyone would, you'd always
No,
be.
I know, but I know you're suggesting in the first instance, it would be
One person would be 1 year, one person would be 2 years.
What I'm saying is I would almost rather recommend 2 years and 3 years with a rolling 2 years from there forward.
Okay, then fine.
Yeah,
I could live with that.
yeah, I like that. And I think of it as a 3-2, not a 2-3.
Okay, so wait, just so I've got it. You're saying the actual term is 2 years,
Right.
but that in order to stagger it, rather than having one person, the odd number be 1, the odd number is 3. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because 1 year is so.
You get good at it
You
and then you're
just
done.
start getting
Yeah.
your feet under you and.
Yeah.
Especially when we have monthly meetings.
And it seems like a lot, but it really isn't.
Yeah. And I don't think you'll be meeting monthly forever. I think that's at the beginning.
Yeah.
That's so
Right.
frequent.
So that makes the argument even stronger to have a longer term.
Yeah.
I like that.
I think a
can-
2 year
I can
term
get that.
with 3 year.
With a 2 and 3 for
Yeah.
the initial
For the first.
co-chairs, yeah.
Okay.
Is there any reason why someone, when they're finishing up their term, does it have to change?
Well,
I don't know, that's something we should probably think about.
Yeah.
And decide, do we wanna make sure that who the co-chairs are moves around?
This group is diverse enough that it should move around. You know, I see groups that tend to have one person for life. And so our board chair has been board chair for like 16 years in a row. We used to rotate, but when he became chair, it's obvious the better match for him than not being the board chair. So I think this group is diverse enough that it should rotate around.
Okay, so then we would have basically served 2 terms in a row, could come back
I think
around.
we have to serve 2 rooms. I mean, I don't know that we have to bind that.
Okay.
But I think it's not a mandatory requirement we have to change, but every year we adjust it.
Practice,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think you're right about that, like, and we're all serving on behalf of particular viewpoints, and so having that particular viewpoint as part of leadership seems like a valuable thing to keeping the group cohesion.
Politician, you don't want the politician, that person. They can call me commissioner. I don't want to be either one of those.
Full disclosure, I asked Commissioner Tucker if he was interested.
The answer's no, thank you.
So could we put in there, I mean, I'm just trying to think down the road, with this committee. Could we put in there, something like, in general, preference for moving around, but not preclude the opportunity for, you know, a second term or whatever, and
if there's something going on at that moment where it makes more sense for continuity.
Yep.
Maybe it makes more sense or whatever.
Nobody else
Putting
wants
in
to.
More likely.
Yeah.
So do we want to set a 2-term limit then, or?
I mean, you kind of, it's a small group, right? And so if the group feels like it changes, it changes. I almost think putting some goals, some like ideas in there, but not tying it too much is probably good enough. And if it feels it.
Good to me.
Okay. So, in terms of, we're gonna have to wrap up here in a few minutes, and then there's a couple of slides at the end, they're gonna be quick, that I gotta go through, to make sure we're all on the same page and know what's happening next. But, sounds like probably next time you should have people you want, people should be ready to step up, and we could spend 2 minutes talking about that today. Wants to step up, and that was a great, everyone has different first term lengths on the committee. I mean, there's batches of 1, 2, 3, and 4 years. I don't know those off the top of my head, but, that should be.
But Amanda memorized them and she looked them up really quick.
No, I can't remember. I couldn't find them, but I'm trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
So Terry, I will say that from my perspective, thinking, I've like thought about this because of my experience, both with like county commission boards and just with the folks in the room. And at least I would say that given all the different options of formulas and combinations, it seems like having folks who were involved in the mediation process, to me, would be great as co-chairs. I just want to like put that out there to the group, initially. And I mean, that's like these two mostly, I think. But
And I think that'd be, I was thinking,
I wasn't there.
Exactly the pair I would favor.
I can make a motion.
A consensus, and it won't be a substantial decision. So I was just thinking that like,
Look at what we've done here in 1 minute.
a way to think about it, right? I thought that was gonna come under great withering fire.
Okay, so, that's an initial thought to consider, and obviously you folks have to consent to that. And then the rest of the group will think about it and consider it and discuss.
So for those on the phone, we just pointed to Stacy and myself.
There you go. So Casey proposed that Stacy Detweiler and Seth Barnes be the co-chairs initially. That's as far as Casey got.
Before it was called to a vote.
Yeah, so, and we can mull on that. I mean, if you want to make, I guess, if you want to make that decision today, I mean, Jason isn't in the room.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if he were here. In that sense, I recommend you don't.
As I say, but the reality is that in the future, there's gonna be, I would say, many times where one of us will not be able to make it. And as long as we have 7 affirmative votes, if we're gonna vote on it versus consensus, as long as we have 7 votes, I'm not sure that, and I apologize for saying that, because it could be me that needs to leave early or on time or whatever it might be.
But in this case, we didn't have on the agenda that there was gonna be a decision made,
Okay.
so he didn't have the opportunity to designate a proxy.
Or you can weigh in.
Beforehand. That's
We can have that as the first agenda item next time.
Yeah.
So if you go to the next slide, so just real quick, I think we're gonna make it by 4. Or I'm sorry, on down to the one that's colorful graph thing, like.
Timeline.
Yeah, timeline. So just,
It's scary.
here we go, I'm sorry. This is all the stuff.
Look at all that we got done.
Back one. There we go. So just real quick, just a reminder, this is what we're up to. We talked about the charter today, February, talked about the charter, talked about IRC nominees, and didn't get to completely selecting co-chairs, but I think we're close. List of topics and first research questions. We're not gonna get to the list of topics next time. I don't think. I'll tee it up and have it structured to start there. So that's kind of what's coming up. I'll, draft that stuff. I'll take the conversation about the charter and boil it into something that you folks can review. And I'll also send out, here's the other things, and if you could try and get back to me within a week on your thoughts, so sort of you're feeding your brainstorm into me, and I'll take that and put it in the second half, part B of the charter. I'll also get the questions for the bios for the IRST nominees together. And then, go to the next slide. So next, the question, next meeting's on the 27th. There's a decent chance I won't be able to be here in person, but I can certainly, I'm going to be at the meeting, whether it's virtual or in person. And so just checking in, Jason requested in person. What are your all thoughts?
I'd probably have to be, in order to accommodate my kids' spring break, sorry, kids, I was not planning to be here in person.
Okay.
But I was planning to be on virtually.
Okay.
I'm preferring in person.
Okay.
Yeah.
In person?
Yeah, so hybrid.
Yeah,
I mean, a hybrid.
in-person or
Yeah.
hybrid is fine.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so that's where we are today. It could be early by 39 seconds. Any other questions or wrap up stuff before we conclude for the day?
Thank you, everybody, though.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's the last slide. Really appreciate everyone jumping in and participating, and thanks everyone online for showing up and participating as well. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.